Everyone, it's me, Felicia, of the Lockhart Perspective and Headlines with a Voice. I want to tell you a little secret. This is what I used to do, because I don't do it anymore. I would go to the store, buy the barbecue sauce, pour it inside of a bowl, put a whole bunch of different spices, a dash of brown sugar, a dash of maple, and a dash of mustard, stir it all around, and everybody would be like, oh my gosh, this is the best, this is the best. But I was exhausted after all of that, and a lot of times I couldn't remember how many dashes of what I put in it. But I don't have to do that anymore, because now I just go to Judge Joe Brown's website and I order his 3-pack of bottled barbecue sauce. It is by far the best, and I do mean the best barbecue sauce I've ever eaten. And when you go to his website and you order his 3-pack, you'll see exactly what I mean. Head on over to jjbbbbq.com and order Judge Joe Brown's barbecue sauce. You'll be glad you did, and you're going to tell me about it. I know you will. Felicia has a mute issue today. Nonetheless, I'm going to say it again. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Headlines with a Voice. I so appreciate each and every one of you all for tuning in with us today. I want to let you guys know, obviously, that Judge Joe is with us today. But you know what? There's an old passage that comes to mind, and it says that a workman is worthy of his hire. So from the very beginning and throughout the show, we are going to give you his Cash App, because I really honestly want you all to support everything that he does when he comes to our channel. Now, I do want to say this. There have been a few of you that have purchased some of his barbecue sauce and have sent me the link and have shown me that you've gone to Amazon and done your thing. Thank you, baby. Thank you. I want all of you guys to try it, because, you know, we got Labor Day coming up, and it's always a good time to grill, and it's always a good time to have his delicious barbecue sauce. So what I'm going to do right now is go ahead and give everybody the opportunity to give to him. You can hit the Cash App, and you will go to Ricky, L-R-I-K-I-L Stone, Ricky L. Stone. And you're going to do that, and that is going to help us support Judge Joe Brown. That's how we support him. So I want you guys to make sure that you do that, okay? I'm going to hide behind that so you can see it. I'm going to hide right there. But that's what I want everybody to do. We're going to go on ahead and show that throughout the show so that we can support and listen. I don't want anybody to feel like, you know, you got to get $1 billion or something like that. Every little bit counts. Every little bit counts, but a workman is definitely worthy of his hire. Today, we are not talking about things like everybody else has. We're not going to even approach it the way that others have, or the way that others just might do in the future. We are dealing with this from a historic standpoint. And so because of that, I want you all to take the time to go there and to support him. If you have Cash App, that's how you want to do it. Okay. If you have Cash App, that's how you want to support him today, is via Cash App. All right, folks, let me go ahead and take this down and let you all know exactly what we're doing today, so that way you guys can follow along. We're looking at some history. I'm going to leave that up for just a second so those of you who want to see it can see it. We're looking at some history today. Lots of history. All right, lots of history. And the reason why we're looking at history is in order for you to understand where you are and where you're going, you have to understand what is behind it. You have to get it, right? And so I know that a lot of people here studied the Bible, and, you know, you study the Quran and you study other major great books or whatever. And that's all cool, because a lot of us have, right? In order for us to have licensures, some of us had to do it as a part of our vocation, right? But for those who are just lay members, we're going to put it down here today where you all can just pick it up, grab it, and walk away with it. Because you got to understand the nature of what it is that we're dealing with. And so by saying that, we're going to have our conversation started right now with Judge Joe Brown. And I want you guys to all welcome him. And remember to put a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not subscribed and this is your first time here. And then I also want those who have the ability to share this out to please share this out. Judge Joe Brown, welcome, 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 kind sir.
Well, glad to be here. I hope you're doing well.
Yes, sir, I am. You know, we've been speaking a lot together with regards to the history of this place, And I say place because based on some of the stuff that I've been looking at, the name that we call this place that you and I are going to go into today is not the same. It didn't start out as India. And we're talking about India. And everybody that wants to understand, we are talking about the upcoming elections. We are discussing Kamala Harris. We are discussing even Trump when it's necessary. But in order for us to get what is about to happen, and in order for us to understand the question that we asked the other day, what is her platform? Well, her absence of platform is the surprise. It's the surprise. You have all of those people out there saying that I'm going to vote blue no matter who. Oh, it's Kamala. I'm going for Kamala. I want her over Trump is what a lot of people are saying. But nobody has her platform. We created one for her the other night. If you all were here, you remember we created one. And when we created it, we made sure to bring up everything that she had done to the best of our knowledge. Now, there are some pretty vile things that I've seen. I will not talk about here, but there's some pretty disgusting things that I've seen based on her vice presidential pick. And I've read some old articles that had nothing to do with today. And some of those old articles that had nothing to do with today are very concerning. With that in mind, let's just go on ahead and deal with her. Tell us about the history of these individuals.
Well, I sent you some research material.
Oh yeah, you did.
And essentially what's going on is this. It looks like Kamala Harris has no program, but she actually does, but she's not going to tell you what it is until it's too late, and then you can't do anything about it. Now, in the process, she's appealing to Black people because Black people cannot control an election, but they can lend ballast that significantly helps out a side that gets them if it's going to be a close thing, and that's what they're counting on. And that's got a great deal to do with conditioning that the Black ethnic group has. And by Black ethnic group, I put in that category those who have what is commonly known as ADOS qualifications, American descendants of slavery. There was something that was installed in our culture during slavery that still stays with us, and very few of us are aware of that, but it influences a lot of what we do. It's kind of cultural conditioning. What we have, and I want to get to this first before we actually get to Kamala and her background, is this. About 50 plus, more than 50 years ago, I was an intern at a DC think tank. It was called the Center for National Policy Review, operating out of Catholic University in Washington, DC. One of my research assignments was to go over what we had called the slave pamphlets. They were on microfilm in the Library of Congress, and they were instructions on how to, in today's terms, raise slaves for fun and profit. There really was a Willie Lynch, a William Lynch, but it wasn't a letter that we are concerned with because he wrote many, and he published many pamphlets, and he did tours all over the English colonies to promote slavery and its methodologies. He held slaves in Bermuda. Also in this colonial empire at the time that was impacted was Barbados, the Bahamas, Jamaica. There was what became the United States. There was Canada. What we find is that he toured these areas to promote his methods of slavery. One of the most insidious instructions he gave the slave owners was to make the crucial elements of slavery part of the Negro's culture so that the Negro will teach himself how to be a slave. And famously, he said, if you do these things, the Negro will not only make a slave of himself, he will make slaves of his own people for the next 400 years. And we're still in that 400-year period. So he also said, as a severe admonition, never ever work through Negro men. Don't care whether he was your favorite butler, pet, carriage man, huntsman, valet, it didn't make any difference. Never interface with the rest of your slaves through a male Negro unless you make him an overseer because he's extremely trusted, and then only through a Negro female. Always have your mammies deal with the rest of the Negroes. That will keep them from becoming, in today's terms, sufficiently masculine.
Wow.
And they will have a different orientation, which is, instead of do or die, instead of it's better to die than to suffer these particular slings and arrows, it is better to survive at all cost, even if that means submission. So that's what he wanted to put in the Negro's head. And we see that today because that cultural thing is still there in their operative dog whistles and phrases, which, if blown or uttered, evoke the desired response. And Black people today still have it in us because so many do not understand what's going on. You see, white people, they tend to get serious about things, and we dance and sing. You see, white people frown, and we're always grinning. You see, white people who are quiet until it comes time to act, and then they act very violently without warning. And then you see us loud mouthing all the time, woofing about what we're going to do. Usually we don't do it unless it's stuck on stupid stuff. It's a different kind of way of approaching things, and it's got to do with one of the crucial points of this acculturation of the Negro to make him a good slave who will make slaves of his posterity. And that is to cause him to fixate on appearances rather than on realities. See, the Negro was not taught camouflage. He was taught how to be glaring and to dress garishly so he could be well seen. He was taught to be loud in expressing what his emotional state was so he could be interpreted. These things are not good, but we do them. We were taught there was no such thing as free will. And if anything happens, it's because you properly appeal for it. In other words, you're a cork on the water, and the wind blows you where you want to go if you pray for the wind, and your prayers are answered with a wind that blows you in a given direction. But we don't even know how to deal with that. There's a knock on the door. It's 4 a.m. in the morning. Dude gets up with his dirty boxers on, wife beater on. He answers, "Hey, man, what the hell you want, man?" And the person at the door says, "I am an angel, and I have here a certified check for $250,000, taxes prepaid, courtesy of the prayers of your grandmother." Hey, man, I ain't got no time for that, man. I think I'm gonna cash this, man? I ain't got no bank account. See, that's how we operate. And these dog whistles evoke certain things in us. We get inordinately caught up with skin and think it's kin, to use a popular phrase, but we don't think what's behind it, and we don't assess the contradictions. We are liable to what they call cognitive dissonance, which means in the application of rational, logical, and reasonable processes of thought, we don't draw the appropriate conclusions. One of the things, for example, with ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, is a refusal to associate with Black folk of Caribbean descent, Black folk of African immediate descent, and we say they didn't go through everything we went through, man. Like, hey, they just trying to come in and take advantage of what we went through, man. Yeah. But then they turn right around and they ideate behind a presidential candidate whose only connection is a remote one through Jamaica, which is not even necessarily a black connection. But they go that way and they don't recognize the dissonance in what they're doing. I follow this person because, but I won't associate with this other person because. So we get these things put in our heads, and we also have a desire to, through appearances and also by association, you're judged by the company you keep, kind of, sort of. We have such poor individual and collective self-esteem that we'll settle on anything. Now, one group of people that went through this was the German people in the 1920s. Germany had not been a long-standing country. It had been a conglomeration of principalities loosely connected: Saxony, Pomerania, Prussia, etc. And Prussia wound up uniting German principalities in the 1870s. So in the 1920s, Germany was just about 50 years old, which was well within the lifetimes of a lot of German citizens. They had beaten France in the Franco-Prussian War. They built a navy of sorts to rival England's. They were colonizing Africa and other places in the world. And they were going at it big time, but then they got whipped very badly in World War I. So they wanted a scapegoat, which they got. They got the Jewish population. They wanted something to hold up, to give them connection solidly with the past that was noble, and they came up with the Aryan supermen, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, mighty folk, great warriors, beautiful women from the far north. The fact of the thing is that there are indeed Aryans, and that's one of the articles I gave you to research. And they go back a very long way, but they are not blonde-haired, blue-eyed by any means. They are very swarthy to very, very dark. They have dark hair, dark eyes, and they look just exactly like Kamala Harris. So that myth got spread. It was a lie told long and loud enough. And as we have learned, you tell a lie long enough and loud enough, and you can get anyone, even the liar, to believe it. So there we are. The Aryan Brotherhood, the Aryan Nation, the Nazis, they all talk about the Aryan supermen, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, which they're not. And then we do all kinds of dances to conceal the machinations behind all of this. Like, for example, Russia, through Putin, is putting out a clear message as to why they're in Ukraine, which we do not publish over here. And one of the reasons is simply to prevent the resurgence of Nazism and this Aryan Superman mythology that is rising very fast in Ukraine. Now, getting back to where we are right now, we want to say we've got somebody that's a vice president. We had somebody that's a black president, Barack Obama, Kamala Harris. Oh, we are doing well. We need her because the other guy's a white guy and he's evil. Well, let's analyze this. Barack Obama had one of the lowest rates of connection, or lowest actual connections with the United States as a historical entity. He had no black people who went through slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, segregation, etc., etc. But his mother had long connections with the United States, and when we analyze those connections, they're strange. His mother's father, in other words, Obama's maternal grandfather, his mother's father, was in fact first cousin to George Herbert Walker Bush, President of the United States. They both were nephews to Uncle Herbie Walker, who founded Halliburton. And there was George W. Walker, who was cousin in there. And then there was Dick Cheney, who was also a nephew of Uncle Herbie, and he was a cousin. And then we had Barack Obama in there as a cousin. So that's 1, 2, 3 presidents and 1 vice president. And then let's not forget the governor that entered in there, because he was his opponent's vice presidential. She was his opponent's vice presidential running mate, and that was Sarah Palin, governor of Alaska, was also a cousin. So you've got these people who are blood kin effectively running or influencing the United States, and the spectacle of one cousin running against another cousin in a presidential election. But we didn't get it. But he at least had a white connection to the United States. Now, if we look at Kamala, she doesn't have any white, black, brown, red, nor yellow connections with the United States of America. Her closest connection with this hemisphere stems through her father, who was born in Jamaica. Now, that doesn't mean he's a black man, because Jamaica was part of the British Empire, then the United Kingdom's Commonwealth, which includes Canada, Australia, New Zealand. It included Hong Kong, Singapore. It included Kenya, South Africa. It included Barbados, Jamaica, the Bahamas, Bermuda. And we failed to distinguish these things. So where is her connection to the United States of America? None. But because her 2 parents got married, both of Indian extraction, her mother born in India, her father of mixed Irish and Indian heritage, they had student/academic visas of a limited time, and they went, after they got accepted, to go to university in San Francisco. While there, I guess they were dealing with enjoying the aspects of Kamasutra. I mean, it's part of their culture. And they had a child who just happened to be born there, incidentally to their presence as students. They didn't stay long. They left. They left not long after 1967. Kamala was born in 64, and her sister was born in 67. Then they got on up. It seems mom and dad kind of broke up, and Professor Harris stayed there a little while longer than his visa was up, and he left and came back to Jamaica. So effectively, Kamala Harris is not a child of immigrants because her parents never immigrated to America. She is the immigrant. And there has been no candidate for president in the history of the United States, going back 235 years to when the Constitution was ratified in 1789. There is not one with such a limited connection to the United States and its history. She matches the bare bones qualifications, which say you have to be a natural born citizen, which she is, and you have to have resided here for 14 years, which she has, but it did not assume that you're going to just be the child of transitory people. The loophole that's in there when it comes to citizenship, which is defined in the 14th Amendment, not Article 2 of the Constitution, which defines the qualifications for president. They do this thing with having an anchor baby who they have, so they have a child who is a citizen of the United States, and they get to stay out of a courtesy, out of humanity to raise the child. They didn't even do that. They just came. She got dropped off in a hospital, picked back up, taken home. Her sister got dropped off, picked back home, taken home, and they left. They weren't trying to be residents. So we have an unusual situation where we have a presidential candidate, an active vice president, who has actually no contact or connection with the United States of America, except as a new migrant. She leaves, goes to Canada. Her yearbook says kindergarten through 12th grade. She comes back. She's an adult. She's over 18. She spent a year up in Canada going to a bilingual school, French and English, to improve language skills. And then she goes to Howard University. Okay. Now, that's supposed to make her possessed of all the family connections, all of the legacy that somebody put in or earned. It gives her a claim to family having shed blood, sacrificed, or stood in as somebody who became a U.S. citizen. No, that lacks. So we Black people, for some reason, are so picky about who we'll associate on one side of the equation, and on the other, we just pick anybody because they look like us. But there are a lot of people that look like us. We can go to Australia, and you can find the Aboriginals who are classified as Caucasian. They're darker than most American Blacks. You go to New Zealand and thereabouts, and you run into the Fijians, and they're very dark, very kinky hair, but they're not Black folk. They're not African in terms of the way we take it, which means a recent product of a sometimes sordid diaspora that occurred. Granted, everybody in the world is somebody that descends from somebody who left Africa. Anthropologists say it was about 95,000 years ago. But we get caught up in this game, and we don't know what the game is because we don't think it through. Now, I'll stop at this point and go back to you, ma'am, because you were looking at what I sent you to look at. So let's get back to what we were talking about, ancient history.
Oh, yeah. The ancient history of it all is really important. And I have pulled up a Britannica article, which has several pieces to it, several sections. And we're going to look at that. It's important that we look at it because you need to see that there was a matriarchal, which fits into right now's narrative, leadership at one point, and it's an overall failed group of individuals. And for those of you who are Bible scholars, just think Genesis 6 when you think of this group of people. For those of you who are Bible scholars, think Genesis 6. Think about the Nephal. They are literally the Rephaim. Okay, so they are a offshoot of the Nephilim in a button. I'm just going to give you guys that for those of you who do study the Bible. That's the button. Okay. I also want to show you, as Judge just mentioned, a photo. And this is, you can see that. Who are our ancestors? Those are the Aryans. What you see on the screen.
Very blonde-haired and blue-eyed, right?
Well, no, I'm talking about the original. Right. Yes, I get the joke. Yes. Very blonde hair, blue-eyed. Everybody is, Barbie and Ken. Absolutely. But those are the Aryans. And you heard the history that Judge just broke down for you. We're going to get deeper. So let's pull up the article that we're looking at. And you can navigate
and
me.
By the way,
yes, sir.
By the way, one thing you need to keep in context. This is the Encyclopedia Britannica. It is an English production. And these are the people who were the colonialists that went out and subdued all of these people around the world and had the biggest empire in human history that was worldwide. They used to say the sun never set on the British Empire. So they're telling you what they discovered when they got there.
Mm. And then also I wanted to ask you, since you mentioned Britain, which is obvious because that's what this is all about, I would like for you to give me the significance and the understanding of the University of London. George Soros went there, as well as Professor Harris. How does that play into communism, and does it play into communism?
It was a hotbed of socialist theory at one time and advocacy. And England went from being a world-class empire, mightiest navy, impressive army, excellent air force, very dangerous to mess with, long tradition, and because they got caught up with socialism in too deep a fashion, they fell. They fell badly, and now they are a third-rate nation, notwithstanding the fact that they still have a few remaining nukes from a time of greater authority and power. India is more powerful, Pakistan is more powerful, South Africa is more powerful, Australia is more powerful, so is Canada, and Nigeria is about to become, in a few years, the fourth largest country on the world, possessed of very well-educated people able to make the bomb with a high technology and a lot of energy sources. It is, in fact, occasionally the largest oil-producing country in OPEC, not Saudi Arabia, as most people think. They flip-flop back and forth. I just happen to have had as a roommate at UCLA someone who wound up as Deputy Chief Minister of Energy for Nigeria. Very brilliant man, but he fit in well. And I remember sometimes we'd get pulled over by LAPD and he'd be, hey man, what's going on? Hey man, Foster, don't go there, man. Do that African thing. Yes, officer, is there a problem here? It seems to be a misunderstanding. Yeah, that's it. That's the one right there. You know.
Yeah.
So that kind of guy, he stayed here from when he was 7 until he finished university as a nuclear physicist and returned to Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
So he knows the place, and he had a lot to say about these energy things and the realities that we're dealing with. So that's a little inside information. By the way, one other thing too, he's got African connections. I haven't heard from him for a long time. And he was telling me about his great grandson-in-law, who was Chinese, and his great granddaughter, who was mixed Chinese and African, and how all of his great grandchildren were now on a fast track academically to be scientists and engineers. And he was contrasting an interesting figure with me. We have maybe 60 some million Afro-Americans or African Americans or American blacks who have recent African ancestry, all right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was noted that China had about 120 million Afro-Chins down in southern China. So there are twice as many Africans mixed with Chinese as there are Africans mixed with Americans of some other persuasion besides African. So it's an interesting contrast, but I exceed myself. So let's go back to you, my dear, so we can keep it on track.
Well, I like it. I like it when you go on those nice little trails because we like to follow you wherever you go because where you end up has a lot of knowledge at the end of that road. We are going to look at the Hinduism as a whole. And that's basically what the Britannica article that I was charged to study is dealing with. So we're going to look at that. I'm going to pull that up right now so that everybody can follow along with us, and at your discretion you can share with us where you want to go in this article. I'm pulling it up in the reading space on the website now so that it's just readable and not necessarily anything that has all those ads popping all over the place. It just goes on, and we'll just start it right here and make sure. Is there anything you wanted to add, sir, before I read the narrative to give them a price of what we're dealing with?
Not in particular, just a brief
Okay.
timeline. You have a situation where you have India anciently, as a civilization arises in what they call the Indus River Valley. That's why they have the name India. And a lot spread out of that. And essentially, there were migratory patterns that flowed in through and out of the Indus River Valley anciently that wound up having a great deal of influence on the populations of Europe, England, Scandinavia, and elsewhere. We have a language that we use here in this country, English, which is based on essentially French, German, and Scandinavian languages with a smattering of Romance languages thrown in there. And that is also a result of the influence of these people from the Indus River Valley who came up with what essentially became the foundation for just about all of the popular modern languages, with the exception of the ones out of Asia, like the various Chinese dialects and the Japanese and Korean languages, which are similar but have a somewhat different base.
Well, I pulled it up for the Indus civilization, and just to give everybody, to get caught up to what we are touching on right now and what you just got through hearing, what you just heard. Let me go on ahead and read a brief portion of that to you all. Indus civilization, the earliest known urban culture of the Indian subcontinent, as Judge just shared. The nuclear dates of the civilization appear to be about 2500 to 1700 BCE. I'm going to put a pin here for all the Bible scholars, because you all know that I was indoctrinated with regular Christianity, and I only thought that the beginning of the world started 2,000 years ago. This just said 2500 to 1700 BCE. That is a very important and pivotal piece, because if you all understand the understanding of the struggle that is in the biblical terms, all right, that there is the right, left, one good twin, the other bad twin. If you understand the history of even Eden, okay, and some of us already know that there was another society outside of that city called Eden, and outside of the garden that was inside of the city Eden. You must understand that this predates all that you know or that you thought you knew. So you got to throw all that you thought you knew out your mind and begin to understand. Okay. Judge, did you want to add?
Yes, I do. If you want to get some further background material on it, look up the legend of Gilgamesh, which is, according to the ancient Sumerian text, clay tablets, the oldest known literature to man, and they say it was ancient before it was reduced to the text. You might also familiarize yourself with a place called Göbekli Tepe, and it's located in Persia, and it's been getting excavated, and it seems to be a place that defies all expectations. It's approximately 11,000 years ago when this, I don't want to call it a civilization, but this settlement developed, and it's got stone architecture, monumental stone architecture. And it is also astonishing the anthropologist because the people still seem to be hunter-gatherers, not farmers, as was the expectation. Göbekli Tepe. it's in what is a part of Turkey now. So there are some antecedents that deal with what goes on in the Old Testament, which, by the way, is quite concerned with Abraham, right?
Correct.
Those same clay tablets in ancient Ur, which is about 65 miles northeast of current Baghdad,
You better come on.
They prominently mention Abraham as a chieftain in the area. So he is recorded with the same series of tablets in the same ancient libraries that have Gilgamesh. So I'm sure as a chieftain who is indicated as being literate in their particular form of cuneiform writing, read what's also in those libraries. So it is quite possible that he read Gilgamesh at some point in his lifetime. Now, to give you another perspective, the 2500 BCE, which stands for before Common Era rather than BC, before Christ or Christus, what is going on is all of the major pyramids have been built in ancient Egypt, and those are recorded as to time and date quite thoroughly with the hieroglyphic writings and other recordations that you will find in the tombs, temples, and other places throughout what was ancient Egypt.
The reason why I chuckle, folks, is because I'm absolutely speechless. I honestly am. And the reason why I'm speechless is because I put out an Easter egg about maybe 3 months ago. And I didn't want to bust y'all upside the head with it, to use a colloquialism, to use a colloquial term, but I'm going to say it, and I'll say it now because he just laid the platform and I'm going to walk on through it. For the Christians, for the Bible people, for the people who went to Bible college like me, I'm talking to y'all. If this is the case, and Abraham was from, as we all know, Ur, what else was in Ur? What does that make Abraham? That's a good question. And for those of you who know how to study it, that means you know who Abraham was. Abraham had to be part what? You mentioned in the Epic of Gilgamesh. When we're talking about the Epic of Gilgamesh, when we talk about him walking around with that line that he had, hey, this is my buddy, all of that. What are we talking about? Who is he? See, we have to get our minds unraveled, because this is part of the problem. Because we have been indoctrinated here in this area to a specific belief that is of something totally different that we don't know nothing about, what we end up doing is attaching ourselves to this only Jesus, or this only biblical text, or this only mindset. And the danger in that is, if you don't understand that something started long before that little encapsulation that you've been allowed to know, you don't know why you're voting for somebody. You don't know why you're aligning yourself up with this individual. But guess what? They know. They know. And I just had to share that because he's part God. He's part Nephal. He's part Nephal. That's the answer. If you go by what you know in the Bible, and you know what Ur is, and he's from Ur the Chaldees, you know that. So what is it really? And before anybody starts to throw apples at the channel, I want you to show me where I'm incorrect, but you must do it with history. You must do it with your biblical context, and you must do it and line it up. And you cannot get rid of him being from Ur the Chaldees. With that said, Judge, where else would you like to go? Let's go.
All right,
Go where you want to go.
Let's lead it up to where we are right now with Kamala.
Yep.
Kamala comes from a culture that produced a very fascinating work of literature, art, and practical advice. It's called the Kamasutra. Ever heard of it?
Very much so.
All right, now that's part of your culture. And I remember years ago, I was at Fisk and I was dating this young lady. I was not a student. I was coming through working at a community law center that was located right next to the Fisk campus. And she was interesting. Her father was black and her mother was Japanese, and her mother's family was very well off. Father was an educated black man. So I guess they reluctantly accepted each other, but they got killed in a car wreck. So the family raised the daughter. The mother's family raised the daughter, and she went to school in Japan, and she was conditioned to be Japanese. And part of that conditioning, excuse me, was getting instruction from geishas in sex, which I'll tell you made life very fascinating when I was dating her. So they also wanted her to keep in touch with the black side of the family because they thought it was opportune for her to be educated in America. So she went over in high school. She attended school in the United States and then went on to Fisk and did some things, and we lost track of each other. But the Kamasutra is interesting, and other people in the world have a different attitude toward sex than we do here. In America, we crave it, but we kind of have a nice, nasty attitude toward it. In other words, it's nasty, but it's nice. In other places in the world, it's viewed as something to be studied, to become proficient at, as part of one's education in life, something to be enjoyed, something to be treated with respect, but definitely not nasty. So there was a series of jokes about her that spread around Howard, I'm finding out now from people who went there with her, and also around California, just in general, which went like this. There was an interesting way she got what she wanted, which was, baby, you nice to mama. We'll do what's on page 27 at the bottom. We'll move to page 51 at the top. We'll finish up with page 93 in the middle. And you see, they have pictures in the Kamasutra to illustrate what they're talking about, which if they replaced them with photographs rather than drawings, it'd be pretty wild. Pornhub stuff. So anyway, beyond Pornhub stuff.
Yes, it would.
That way. Like, what? Wait a minute. Damn.
Turn the pages upside down and look at it.
Yeah. Hey, wait a minute. Oh, I get it now. Oh, wow. See, and that's part of the cultural tradition. Now, we have our cultural traditions and they have theirs. So one of the things that we don't get, and you just alluded to, see, if you study outside of what you've been centrally focused on, you'll learn a lot more about your object of focus. If you take the Judeo-Christian religion, and you take a look at it from outside, it lends depth to the whole thing, and you get, and that's the same thing that happens when you look at what other people may be seeing in you. Here is the Negro culture. It is set up where there are a lot of whistles and bells that get blown and rung. And when you do this, they respond in certain ways. We know that because we're outside of it and we study it. Let me turn the page in this book. Oh, that's what's next. Okay, that's interesting. You do A, then B, and C, and you get D, E, and F. Oh, interesting. And we're stuck somewhere around there in D, and we don't realize there's a bigger picture. It's like if you know something and somebody else does not, you can manipulate that other person by playing them for what they do not know, encouraging them by snippets of what they do know, so they fall for it, and you know what's going to happen as a consequence if they do, but they don't realize it. So you can run con on people. And that's how the con artist I used to represent would work. They would back off, study their target, figure out what that person was about, figure out what their weaknesses were, and then feed them information that would lead them to where the con man wanted them to go.
Well, let me ask you, what is Kamala's plan for America?
Now you asked the $24,000 question.
I won.
Yeah, she has a plan. And what is the plan? It's something that's caught up with the same subject we're referring to now. It's religion. See, there is a new religion that's trying to spread itself around the world. The difference between this religion and the old ones is each and every other religion, universally, from whether it was paganism or monotheism, was concerned with developing character. There is a general human character that we all have, which comes from you're out there in a hut on the savannah in Africa, you're in a cave in Europe or Asia, or a cave in Africa. They've got a lot of them where they find fossil remains there too. And you're going out to gather food, vegetative food, small things to bring back and cook, or you're going out to hunt. And you have to have a loyalty to each other because there are a lot of things that are individually bigger than any of us are, stronger than any of us are individually. So humans are a social animal that get their power from being able to interact with each other. Now, when you interact with another of your own kind, there are certain rules that you don't even have to have language to set up. You can watch a wolf pack. You can watch chimps and baboons at the primate area of your local zoo, and they cooperate. So that means if you're out on a hunt, you watch your back. You watch your other guy's back. And sometimes you'll sacrifice yourself or put yourself in a position where you may not make it back to help him out. That's what we do. And that's how we have this social compact about duty, honor, obligation, bravery, and courage, which are universally admired and revered qualities of all mankind, all places in the world. Every single religion that has ever been tries to promote that. Now we have something new. We have a new one that says, forget all of that. You don't owe anything to anybody. You don't have any obligations. The only person that counts is you. You can run off and be a coward. That's all right. You can steal, do anything you want, and everybody else owes you nothing.
Do what thou wilt.
Yes, you are owed entitlements. Just because you exist and you want, you should have. You don't have to earn. No guilt, no shame for deviating from the standards. Oh my God, they're trying to shame somebody. That's horrible. Okay, you don't have to stand up for anything because something's supposed to stand up for you. You have Big Brother, or in today's world, perhaps Big Brother went tranny and now he's Big Sis, who is standing up for you. Hey, it is what it is. So we have Kamala Harris and her Confederates who are into this. I call it the rainbow cult. Now, the rainbow cult is like something that is caught up with her particular Hindu background. You'll note that when you got into that Britannica article and some of the others, that they talked about Hinduism and its temporary displacement by Buddhism, which arose to an extent from Hinduism.
Correct.
And then it regressed and went back in. But you see, Buddhism is interesting. It's an ancient and it's an honorable religion, but it has no God. it embraces all gods and it depends on no God. That's what you have with the rainbow cult. It is godless, but it does not reject gods. It just doesn't have one associated with the particular philosophy, the cult, the faith. And you see, this faith has its acolytes, it has its disciples, it has its new converts, it has its catechism, it has its communion. And I guess the communion is the 6B thing. And I won't be too crude about it, but essentially you can style it as the male members, they unbelt, drop breeches, drop boxers, bend over, certain B cheeks get spread and get boy banged, and now they are initiates. Not saying all people who have done that have used it as a communion to become a member of the cult. That's like saying if you're Islamic, that means you support Al Qaeda and ISIS, or if you were a Christian, you supported Jim Jones and large church picnics where they served a particular flavor of Kool-Aid, which, by the way, one of the supporters, staunch supporters of Jim Jones was, guess who? Willie Brown, then mayor of San Francisco, who was a staunch supporter of Reverend Jim Jones. And Willie Brown was Kamala's boyfriend or sugar daddy, however you want to put it. So we even have a connection with that. But you see, what they're doing is they are trying to do what happens with good Christians. How many of you remember Mama saying, you don't go to church on Sunday, you can't go anywhere else the rest of the week? You remember that?
Yes, I do.
And you sat up there and you were bored. It was hot. You wanted to do something, go play, and your mama comes, be still, you know. Well, she took you once a week, if she went every week, put you in Sunday school eventually, and you had to go. But then think about what else is being done. From preschool all the way through 12th grade, you got these kids sitting in a classroom environment 5 days a week, most of the year. And what are they getting? The rainbow put in their heads.
Definitely.
There's a rainbow on the blackboard. There's a rainbow on the walls. There's a rainbow down the hallways. They have these secret comic books they pass out. They're told not to let their parents know about them. They're encouraged to be tolerant. And it's okay if you don't want to be a boy and you've got the boy equipment. It's okay if you don't want to be a girl and you got the girl equipment. We can change you. Puberty blockers, which are extremely dangerous, by the way. We can mutilate you. We can do stuff so that you can get away with it, because places like California, where Kamala came from, where Governor Newsom out there just signed into law a new statute that says it's a criminal act for a teacher to reveal to a parent that their child is contemplating being mutilated and made into some kind of eunuch or creature with some false appearances, to have their nascent developing breast cut off if they're female, and to have a foam implant put in so they will have a fake penis, or to cut off the penis and the testicles and a fake vagina made and dose heavily on estrogen so they can give the appearance of being a female. That's being encouraged. But if some teacher says, ma'am, I don't want to say anything, but your child, you need to know this, that is now a crime in Tennessee. And that's what you support when you support Kamala Harris. You see, that's what she's not telling you. And that's why there is no platform that details what they're going to do to deal with the solutions. Are we even getting an intimation that there are solutions? No, we're getting more of the same old, same old. For example, there is a very good case in anthropology, psychology, psychiatry that can be made for the proposition that the main problem with our hoods is a lack of manhood. Real manhood. See, men are about the business of making where they live better, safer, more secure places filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose, morality, ethics, making their neighborhoods places of public peace, dignity, and order. They're supposed to be brave and courageous when necessary and men of peace otherwise, but they're not being taught that. And that's part of the fallout from the effort to emasculate the country. So, what is the solution we get from the Kamala cabal or those people who are backing her? It's more of the same. Let's snatch masculinity out of the equation even more so. So we will have these unmanly creeps shooting up the hood and the hallways as well. And let's spring it on somebody suddenly, like you get. I alluded to this earlier, like you get in no clues, and all of a sudden, bam, just out of the clear blue, somebody goes off and tries to kill off the school. And there's one common element you can see in every single one of these creeps. When they do kill off in the hallways or out of the hall, they have a problem with bullies. That's because they've not been taught the manly art of self-defense. They've not been encouraged to show personal bravery and courage by standing up to a bully, even when it becomes obvious that there's no way you can win, but you have to make the stand anyway. We've been getting rid of that. So we don't have Back to the Future with McFly going back and teaching his daddy to stand up for himself, busting Biff the bully in the jaw, knocking him out, and then coming back to the future to find that Biff now works for Dad instead of bullying Dad. We don't have that. We have a culture of nihilism. You know what you know, but you owe no obligation to anybody to do anything for them. It's all about you. You don't
Judge,
think.
I want you to hold, because that's where you're headed. I feel it, and I know it's going to be good. I want to take a break right here.
I'll turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to take a quick break, you guys. I want you guys to check this out. And if you don't get it here, I want you to make sure that you guys go get your barbecue sauce on Amazon. That's right. You can pick it up there. So here's the commercial. I want you guys to make sure you hit that Cash App down there, because that's how you're going to support Judge Joe Brown. It is $ Ricky L. Stone. And that is how you take your telephone, you take that Cash App, and you click the button, and you send him any amount that you have available. I want you guys to go ahead, look at this commercial, and then at the end, if you don't want to go on the website, you can go and get it in the next couple of days here by going to Amazon.
Hey everyone, it's me, Felicia, of the Lockhart Perspective and Headlines with a Voice. I want to tell you a little secret. This is what I used to do, because I don't do it anymore. I would go to the store, buy the barbecue sauce, pour it inside of a bowl, put a whole bunch of different spices, a dash of brown sugar, a dash of maple, and a dash of mustard, stir it all around, and everybody would be like, oh my gosh, this is the best, this is the best. But I was exhausted after all of that, and a lot of times I couldn't remember how many dashes of what I put in it. But I don't have to do that anymore, because now I just go to Judge Joe Brown's website and I order his 3-pack of bottled barbecue sauce. It is by far the best, and I do mean the best barbecue sauce I've ever eaten. And when you go to his website and you order his 3-pack, you'll see exactly what I mean. Head on over to jjbbbbq.com and order Judge Joe Brown's barbecue sauce. You'll be glad you did, and you're going to tell me about it. I know you will.
Lockhart Perspective.
Well, welcome back, everyone, and welcome to the Lockhart Perspective that has just joined us as well here on YouTube. I want to let you guys know that we have heard some pretty good information, and this information is something that you may have already known, but guess what? I doubt it. So I'd like for everybody to take the opportunity to support Judge Joe Brown by going to RIKIL Stone on Cash App and support this wonderful, wonderful man. Make sure that you get your barbecue sauce and make sure that you follow him, because there's also a couple of other channels. One here is the Man Up channel. Dana does an exceptional job I want you guys to make sure that you go over there and support her. It's Man Up, and it's with Dana, and it's also Judge Joe Brown. So you can find him there with her. So there are a lot of ways that you can support Judge Joe Brown. And I really, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, hope that everyone has the opportunity to support him financially, to support him by way of purchasing your barbecue sauce. You can get it on Amazon, and it'll be to you in a couple of days, especially if you're a Prime member. Judge, I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor and allow you, sir. Thank you for kindly allowing me to do our little intermission there. And I want you to go ahead and say what you have to say and go right on into where you are. The floor is yours, kind sir.
Okay, and you can get me on X, formerly Twitter, at Judge Joe Brown TV. Judge Joe Brown TV, at Judge Joe Brown TV. Or you can just enter at Judge Joe Brown, and they'll give you several, but mine has the TV on the end. There are
Very good.
some people impersonating me. Also, I do Valerie Denise Jones. We record on Friday, and it's posted on iHeartRadio the following week. She's a grad student in Florida. She's doing well. She needs some help financially, and I'm not broke, but I operate some businesses, and IRS requires that I do bring in money. Otherwise, they're going to start penalizing me. And under the current administration, the tax schemes are very bad for people trying to run businesses. So let's see, where were we? We got back to.
Yes, we were going into understanding, the whole piece of this over estrogen environment and why.
Oh, yes. See, there's another thing too. How many people have expressed to you that they're tired of being black? I wish I could be something else, blah, 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 blah. Usually it's a joke, right? Well, what this woman and the people behind her represent is an opportunity to change that. You can turn in your resignation. You don't have to be colored, Negro, black, Afro, African American, or black, or ADOS, or anything else any longer. You can turn in your resignation. And if you're willing to go through the communion ceremony that I detailed a little earlier, the 6B thing, then you can become a member of a new ethnic group. And you get all of the privileges of a new member, and you can become a zealot. You can have a purpose, which is a nihilistic thing because you stand for nothing. And you have no obligations. You have no guilt, no shame. Do what you want to do. And that's what we have confronting us. Now, we have instruments, let's say the Black Caucus. But if you go back in the congressional record, which you can look up online or go to a federal information outlet, usually in a federal building, and you make a request through them to get written copies of the federal record, you can look up what they've been up to. The Black Caucus has done nothing for the black race, at least in the last 35 years.
That's true.
Now, the other thing is if you look at the Black Caucus and you look at photographs, official photographs of their members, you'll see they have a lot of white members. You will also see something else too. Look at the Liberty Caucus. That's the LGBTQIA Congressional Caucus, and you will find that all but maybe 5 members of the Black Caucus are also members of the Liberty Caucus. So the question raises itself is, this: who are they representing? The black people that think they are getting an elected representative, or the people that they're masquerading as black for, meaning the rainbow, who gets all of the work? Now, there was a bill introduced by John Conyers in 1997. It kept getting tabled. It got brought back up most famously when Jussie Smollett faked that lynching up in Chicago. And by the way, he was caught on security cameras practicing it the day before. He was also caught on security cameras at a certain costume shop, buying that very noose that he can be seen putting around his neck at a costume shop Halloween week. Well, anyway, he is a nephew by marriage of Kamala's sister, which makes him nephew of Kamala Harris, and there's a lot of photographic evidence of the two of them having met up on the day this incident went down. And then shortly thereafter, Kamala and Cory Booker in the U.S. Senate introduced an anti-lynch bill. It still didn't go anywhere. Then, when nobody is paying attention, this lynch bill becomes the Emmett Till anti-lynch bill. Now, why would the Black American need an anti-lynch bill when A, there are plenty of laws on the books that handle the subject as it is? The answer, there's no need. Matter of fact, Tuskegee Institute, not the Tuskegee experiment, which was just located as an observational thing down in Tuskegee, Alabama, they have for the last century been recording lynchings, and the last one they record is not Emmett Till, but it was in 1964, and it involved one black man, two white ones in this thing that happened down in Mississippi, wherein some civil rights workers got snatched and executed. Now, we've had things that look like it, but basically most of them that look that way are incidental to homicide investigations that are ongoing. And when we talk about the lynch bill, the first thing is let's look at the redefinition of lynching. Now, when we think of somebody being lynched, we think of a lynch mob, right?
Correct.
A whole bunch of people go out and they snatch somebody, a black man, and they lynch him. But remember the old Westerns? As long as I'm sheriff in this here town, ain't nobody gonna string this kid up here. We gonna give him a fair trial before we hang him. A lot of the folk that got lynched were white folk. So it's not just a black phenomenon. But aside from that, we think of a group of people, a mob, going out and killing somebody. Well, this new bill changes the law so you don't have to have a mob. One person can be guilty of lynching. And interestingly enough, we don't even have to have a death. We can have a kidnapping. That can be lynching if one person kidnaps somebody that's a lynching. And we don't even need a kidnapping. We need what amounts to, at worst, a beating. So if one person beats somebody else, that is now a federal lynching. But what is important is for the first time in the lexicon of American federal criminal law, you introduce sexual orientation. Let's work this one out. How does it work? Oh, this guy broke up with his old lady. He's feeling bad, and his homie say, hey, man, why don't you come run to the club with us, man? Maybe you might meet somebody, take your mind off of things. No, man, I don't want to go. Oh, come on, man, let's go. So he goes on and goes, and he winds up hooking up with what he thinks is a PYT, pretty young thing, in a tight, short, tube dress. She got nice mammaries, let's say, at the top. She's got her hoop earrings on, and she's got her braids down to her butt, and she smells good, and they're dancing and drinking and exchanging spit over in the shadows. She's feeling real good. And then he said, wait a minute, what's this? You got a heart on? What the hell are you? And he busted in the jaw. Now, that's federal lynching. So the FBI comes in because this was about him being a tranny. Sexual orientation. He thinks he's a girl, not a boy. So this guy now has his federal case. Did that do anything for black folk? No, that was a way of exploiting black folk for somebody else's purpose. So we have to look at what we are getting when we deal with these things. Is this what we really want? Now, I mean, I'm not saying dump on somebody, but do you have a daughter? Are you a woman? Are you a young female student? Are you a female athlete? Do you want to have to compete against a male who puts on a sports bra and tucks himself in, and now he's a girl because he thinks he's one, so he gets to compete against you? Well, that's not fair. And the rule is if you can make the varsity, sit in the stands and cheer like everybody else. And when I say cheer, I don't mean putting on a short skirt trying to play girl and high kick. You toss the cheerleaders up in the air and you catch them. So, and we don't need a special league for them. That's a waste of time. We already have enough distractions with that kind of thing anyway. Just sit in the bleachers, straighten yourself up. You're a freak. Try and get some therapy. And there was a thing that was released by the American Medical Association, the Psychiatrist Association, the Clinical Psychologist Association a few months ago, and they said, hey, we don't go for this. This is a sham. This is not the learned opinion of all of these professions that this is normal. This is just a very few of us who tend to be practitioners of the practice in question, and they want it to be normal. What we found is that after 4 years, most of the youth who ideate on doing this change their minds. And as a matter of fact, right here in Tennessee, they've got an interesting case in Nashville where the chancellor hearing it is a sister. She's a pretty good looking one. I've never met her, but she looks good on a photograph anyway. And what the issue is that a conservative reporter was allowed to photograph a police report that detailed what was in a manifesto that a freak left last year. What was the freak about? He went back to a private school, killed 3 children and 3 adults. He got gunned down and killed, but he left a written manifesto. And what they don't want is the destruction of the narrative that they're putting out, because this guy says, you did me wrong. I was but a child. You shouldn't have encouraged me to go do this transition thing. You should have told me to be a man, and I wouldn't have done what I did to myself. Now I'm angry and I want revenge, and I don't care. I'm going to take somebody out. And he took 6 people out, but they don't want that manifesto to come out because it's destructive to the position. Now, you know, and I know, since we're on, is this YouTube that's carrying this live, right? Ma'am?
Yes,
YouTube.
it is, definitely.
Now, what is it YouTubers hate, and Dana's always lecturing me about? Getting demonetized.
Absolutely.
Even if it doesn't deal with porn, and hell, you can put porn on there, full frontal, all kinds of freak stuff. Make Pornhub fans blush. That's okay, but you can't say anything outside of the party line. You're censored.
Yep.
That
Absolutely.
is old-time censorship, and this is what you bring on yourself if you support that. It's not just, oh, I want to vote because she's kin by skin, which isn't the right kind of skin. You know, you can have a black Ford and a black Chrysler and a black, Chevrolet. That doesn't mean they're all from the same manufacturer. They just have a paint job, which means something different. It's just a black car.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely,
it's got the same thing when it comes to people. Now, we need to get into what's behind this, because we don't want to set up this kind of censorship. And if you don't get it, expand your horizons. Read this book, 1984 by Orwell.
Oh, yes.
And if you don't want to read that one, which goes into some interesting things, but it's kind of corny, read Animal Farm by Orwell. And if you don't want to read it because you're too lazy to do that, you can Google it. Google Animal Farm by Orwell, and there's a 1952 animation that the CIA is responsible for, where they bring out the whole book, and they are trying to bring it out to fight communism and justify having just dealt with fascism. This is 1952. So it pretty much word for word covers it. and it deals with exactly what you're looking at right now. The corruption of an idea, the seductive thing that you can do with somebody by bringing them in on an idea and then without telling them what's going on, redirect it until it becomes something else, something hideous. So check it out, and I'll leave that to you for a homework assignment, since today we don't understand somebody being a witness to a thing. We want it backed up on social media, failing to understand that social media does not vet people's writings. Anybody can write and put it on social media. And if it's written, it is written, therefore it is, this ancient thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is written in the book, the writing, as it is written, this kind of thing. We fall for that still now because it's been ingrained in us over thousands of years from those cuneiform clay tablets in ancient Siberia. I'm not Siberia, ancient Mesopotamia. And by the way, a little historical note, when Moses comes down from the mountaintop with the Ten Commandments engraved in stone, was it stone or just hardened clay like the Sumerians used, or those in ancient Ur used, where you put it in and it took a little while for the clay to fire up? Was the burning bush really the burning bush, or was it used to harden the clay like was done in ancient Ur? So, I mean, there's all these things to think about. Meanwhile, let's talk about precedent and what we're setting ourselves up for. Let's take something that is also Buddhist that we mentioned, karma. Ever heard of karma?
Oh, definitely. I know a lot of people that need to get a little.
Okay. Now, did you read Exodus very carefully?
I have read Exodus, but I could do a lot more. What you need me to do?
All right. What are they talking about in Exodus?
When they are referring to the mass leaving of Egypt?
No, what they do after they leave Egypt on the way back to Palestine and Israel.
When they're
what
circling,
are they doing?
When they're circling that mountain? Are you referring to
not
that
just
portion?
the mountain, the whole
belly
thing
aching
they
and
do.
complaining?
Well, not just that, but all the way back. Remember when Moses sicks the Levites on his followers and orders them to kill one Israeli per tent because they wouldn't follow his orders to kill every man, woman, and child in this particular tribe, which also was the tribe of his personal wife, which was also the tribe of in-laws and wives and nieces and nephews of many of his followers. What do you think he was doing?
Getting rid of a group of folks.
Cleansing.
Ethnic cleansing. Yeah.
Ethnic cleansing. Now, have the Jews not suffered from their own bouts with ethnic cleansing over the intervening 3,500 years? I believe there was this thing with the Christians, and I can't say this because it's on YouTube. We got demonetized because I simply made an observation of what Christians did to Jews at stakes, and that's not good. What did Adolf do, which is not good?
Right.
Is that karma continuing down the ages for something horrible done? Look what America has is something that its karmic circumstances are bad off of, slavery itself. But you see, these are things that we don't talk about, but become obvious when you start looking at things. So there has been this point all through history where new religions and a height of zeal by any means necessary will impose themselves on new followers. Now, is the border wide open for any discernible purpose? I can't think of one overtly. Can you?
Not overtly, but yeah, if we go under the radar,
secretly,
certainly.
Yeah.
Yes, but not overtly.
You're seeking new converts because you want to spread your new faith worldwide. And I remember this back in the 60s. There was a guy named Ray. He was Hispanic. He wound up marrying a black woman, and they both became professors on staff at UCLA. But that's been a long time ago. And we had this third world thing. So we would take the Hispanics and the Indians around, Native Americans around, the Asians around. They'd take us around, and we would show each other things, secrets. I remember Ray had us down outside of Ensenada in Mexico, that's south of Tijuana. And there was this hill where there are these people living in cardboard lean-tos, and the children had on T-shirts and naked from the waist down so they didn't get sores and infected because they had nowhere to wash. And this was up until they got to be 10 years old, and they would catch these huge roaches and stick them on unfolded coat hanger and roast them and eat them. And it was 1.5 miles downhill and back uphill to get water. One woman had 20 some children, and Ray was just raging at these priests who were smugly saying, but we want more Catholic souls, so it is her obligation to have as many who will become Catholic as possible. And as to where we put them, well, that border up north is only a man's artificial constraint against God's purpose. So don't pay attention. Have all the babies you can. We need more Catholic souls, so let's go up north of the border. There's plenty of room up there. So what they're doing is doing the same thing that these foolish Catholic priests were doing, and that is they are opening the borders so at any cost, including some very horrible ones, you can get more converts. By the way, this woman with 20 some children only had 9 that lived, and I think 11, 12, 13 of them died.
Wow.
And that's not a good thing. And she was disease ridden. She had ulcers all over her skin. She wasn't that old, but she looked like she had escaped from a grave and was playing zombie.
Wow.
Now, see, we have these kind of fanaticisms that display themselves, and that's exactly what you get. Now, back to this thing I was talking about with our congressional representatives as an example. Now, I knew Johnny Cochran pretty well. I've knew him since 1966, and we had each other's phone numbers, and we'd occasionally talk. Now, we discussed reparations at some length, and we had some ideas. I have some. I might get somebody to try, but I won't get into now. But principally, the main avenue to possibly getting reparations would be a Congressional Enablement and Appropriations Act. And you would expect the Black Caucus to introduce that, but they have not introduced one for Black people. They did introduce one successfully for the gay community, and it passed on the first voice vote, no debate. Now, how did that happen? About 5 or 6 years ago, remember when the Congressional Black Caucus was having this circus about hearings on the issue of whether a commission should be appointed to study reparations?
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
Well, the chairman, who was listed until I and some other people started paying attention to it on X for the Black Caucus Committee, Reparations Committee, was listed. He was a member of the Black Caucus. He is currently, after 17 and a half years of service, the congressman for the 9th Congressional District of Tennessee, which is one of the largest predominantly Black districts in America. His name is Steve Cohen. He's gay, white, and Jewish, and he's chairman of the Black Caucus's Reparations Committee.
I do remember who that is. Yes.
Now, you see the interesting situation here. Is anybody being real with us or fake? He's also prominent in the Gay Caucus, the Liberty Caucus. And 2 weeks after this circus that the Black Caucus put on with his contrivance, they introduced a bill known as the Gay Reparations Act. It was only 58 million. It was chump change, and basically it was compensating gay married couples for
Wait
the
a minute,
loss
wait a minute,
of,
wait a minute. Wait a minute.
yeah, Gay Reparations Act. It
And
passed.
and it passed, and they were, and so people got cash for this.
Yeah, and what it was just $58 million at the time, but it's open-ended and it's still ongoing, so no telling how much was actually or is actually going to be involved. But this same bunch supported a Gay Reparations Act 2 weeks after they did that circus about whether to appoint a commission to study Black reparations. So are we getting representation, or did our Negroes resign and join a new ethnic group?
Judge, can I take you off the screen for a second? Just for a second, just for a second. Okay, so now you just heard what he just said. And for every single one of you guys that's running around here talking about, we don't need no reparations, that's the past, that's the past. How dare you? How dare you? And for everybody else that's saying, well, we don't need to pay them anything because we weren't the ones that did it. They weren't the ones that, did you do that? Did you bully somebody? Did you personally, taxpayer, did you do that? No, you did not. But y'all okay with 58 million? That's okay to y'all. This is a totally different show for a totally different time. But let me guarantee you, we coming back to this. Oh yeah, because now it's on and pop. It's on and popping because this lays the foundation for the fact that so many people think that it cannot be done and it should be done. I want my daddy's records. Like Blind Mellow Jelly, I want my daddy's records. I want everything that belongs to me. And I'll explain to you how I believe it should be done at a later date. But here is Judge Joe. That's some BS. And y'all don't have no problem with that.
Okay. Aside from the obvious problems with that position that they have taken and how they haven't done anything, nobody's introduced any legislation. Nobody's even introduced one to set up a formal study committee, like who gets it? What are their qualifications? Do you require a DNA test, or is somebody's woof family legacy supposed to suffice? Here is the thing. You can't really sue because there is this thing about American law. It's consistent. If somebody enslaves you, they confined you against your will. That's called a tort. It's tortious. It's a wrong. Depending upon what your state is, if somebody commits a tort against you, you generally have somewhere between 1 and 2, and rarely 3 years to file a lawsuit to do something about it. The last time somebody was officially a slave was almost 160 years ago. So the last time somebody was done wrong may have not been that long ago when it came to some act that was, shall we say, associated with slavery. But did anybody file an action within that year, 2 or 3, when the statute of limitations ran? See, that's the problem. Sue the government. Well, we've got a long-standing and ancient 2,000-year-old tradition, precedent, where you can't sue the sovereign without the sovereign's permission. So did the government allow itself to be sued? Answer, no.
No.
So who are you going to sue? There's nobody there, which is why we have this problem. I had thought about perhaps proceeding through Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution that says one of the primary responsibilities of the federal government and the military forces is to, quote, enforce the law of nations, and say that that is something that gives some standing, which is not really there. But then we go to Article 6, which says part of the supreme law of the land shall be those treaties that have been ratified by the U.S. Senate. Says it is the duty of all judges in the nation, state or federal, to enforce treaties. Do we have any treaties that speak on the subject with the UN? And since it grants state judges the authority to enforce these treaties, perhaps we can start at a level that we can navigate through and be creative and propound some way that would enable us to sue a sovereign entity, maybe. I don't have time to deal with it right now. This is the third time in my life that reparations has come up. At least twice in my parents' life. My old man was born in 1910 and my mother in 1917. They told me. And I met my maternal grandfather. I was sitting on the side of the bed when he died, and he was born in 1850. And he actually, according to the writings he left me, applied for 40 acres and 1 mule and was getting married at 15 going on 16, which wasn't unusual at the time. So he made an application, but Democratic Vice President, then President Johnson from Tennessee, not Lyndon Baines, but the 150 some years ago, became president, and he vetoed William Tecumseh Sherman's general order of January 16, 1865, that ordered the dispensation of 40 acres of confiscated rebel land and 1 army mule to each black family. And he detailed how a new family could make application, which my grandfather was attempting to do. And unfortunately, after General Grant approved it, Abraham Lincoln approved it, the Republican Congress, House, and Senate passed a bill to finance it. Well, since it was an order signed in a military district and the war still had not been totally resolved by restoration of citizenship and statehood to the 11 places in the Confederacy, Johnson exercised his authority as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Services to essentially cancel the proceedings. So we've been trying to go at it ever since, and we have yet to be successful. So I look at it personally as it's like the lottery. When it builds up way high, I always buy 15, 20 tickets. Maybe I'll win, maybe not. It's worth the throwaway investment, at least for the amusement. But I'm not going to sit there and spend all my time trying to deal with a long shot gamble. So I would say don't back off of it, but there are people that you have chosen and you pay to do these things for you. It's called your congressional representative. Mm-hmm. And since our congressional representatives are not doing a damn thing for us, maybe we need to change them, which is part of this thing about are you always loyal to Blue, who does nothing for you except get you to support the old slave masters on the plantation, so you respond and do what they want you to do for purposes that are not yours? See, there's the other thing too. Negroes were property on the plantation. And every now and then, somebody came in from outside and bought the plantation and the Negroes that were with it. That's happened. Mm-hmm. Guess who it is that bought the plantation and the plantation's Negroes?
Who?
We talked about it. The Rainbow Cult.
The Rainbow Cult,
new religion, like
mm-hmm.
the Catholic Church is filthy rich, one of the richest entities on the planet. The Rainbow Cult has lots and lots and lots of money.
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about Kamala's connection with the Catholic Church in California during the time that she was sort of holding on to the documents that she would not allow to be
The
utilized. I
priest
want
to
to,
be prosecuted. Yeah.
yes. And then I also want to talk about, see, that is a piece, and I've always felt like she only does things for people who can do something for her. And so that's one thing. And then I also want to ask you the very important component right now with regard to policing in the United States, and what might be the plan for the policing in the US, considering California as well as New York and Illinois, to count just a few, have now allowed individuals who are not United States citizens to become police officers. How does that play into their plan for the future? Since again, we haven't heard a platform for her. Can you address those couple of things?
Okay. All right. Let's deal with it straight on. Okay. California has long done that. They always had a track where, particularly exercised by Hispanics, where if you came in and you made application for citizenship, you made application and you didn't crash the border, you could be fast tracked if you became a cop, a highway patrolman, a sheriff's deputy. Service always advances you to the front of the line. After World War II, a lot of Filipinos were fast tracked into citizenship because they had assisted the American forces in the Pacific in World War II. That's an old thing. We had immigrants who came in through Ellis Island or before Ellis Island, and what they did is they joined the U.S. Army. It's a long tradition. I'm not so upset about that because a person has got to demonstrate commitment. And if you put your life on the line, that's demonstrating commitment.
Absolutely.
But one of our problems here is that what are you doing when you make there no conditions on this stuff when it comes to other things? Look at your driver's license. Does it have a star on it? Does it?
Mine does, yes.
Okay, what did you have to do to get that star, and why did you have to get it?
They were threatening that it was going to be necessary, and there was no other one was going to be accepted later, and they had a timeline.
To get on an airplane.
Yeah,
right?
to do all of these things, to move about the country, you got to have this. This is what they were telling all of us.
Why did they come up with that? That's because California, New York, etc., decided to issue driver's licenses to illegal aliens. They said it was for public safety. So now, thanks to that, we all have to get new licenses, and they've also amped up the ante. You have to show your birth certificate now. A previous license is not good enough. I'm 77 years old. I haven't seen a birth certificate in 30-some years. All right. So here's the joke. I have to apply to Washington, D.C., where I was born, to their vital records to get a birth certificate duplicate certified, right? Guess what they want me to use to authenticate that I am who I am?
What?
My previous, now no longer valid driver's license.
Wow.
So, in other words, you submit bogus ID to get valid ID, which just puts it back one step. But you see, we are being discriminatory if we require ID to prove you're a citizen before you vote, but yet you are a citizen, but you got to provide a birth certificate type ID to be able to drive a car, thanks to these people. And when it comes to getting a driver's license, I think of all the thugs, reprobates, etc. I've either represented or presided over who had driver's licenses when they held up the liquor store, the grocery store, they did a getaway, or they committed some traffic infraction or violation. Everybody's got a driver's license, but that's too difficult for somebody to get the vote. But yet, because you want to let the illegals in who don't need an ID, all the rest of us have got to go get an ID to do what? Write a check, present ID to buy whiskey, get in a movie. You see, get on an airplane so we can travel freely. What time is that? That sounds like a complete mess. So somebody's talking out of their heads when they want to come up with that. These are the kind of things that we have to look at that are the inconsistencies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very good.
Go on.
So, I want to also talk about, because when I look at everything that happened in California, as you know, I was raised in California. I am a Southern girl.
Me too. Me too.
And I was raised out there. And so as you stated before, and I've stated before here on the platform, I remember a lot of the stuff that was going on with her back then. And one of the things that I see now that is rampant across the United States is dealing with the whole truancy piece. I want to talk about the financial component to the truth about truancy. Not to mention the fact that, yes, our children do need to go to school. I don't want to make anybody believe that I don't think that people need to be educated. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm talking about is the fact that right now we have physical police, not necessarily security officers, but actual police officers at the schools in specific neighborhoods, because I showed you guys last week, they're not in every neighborhood. They're only in some neighborhoods. And then it looks exactly like a prison when you get up to the school. I want to talk about what the essence is about what could possibly be the plan for our country in the next couple of years, specifically if we fast track it and this lady and the guy that's with her gets in. Can you speak to that?
Well, look what Walt signed into law. They call him Tampon Tim. Putting tampons in boys' bathrooms.
Yes.
All
What's
right.
that about?
Yeah, requiring that they be fast-tracked if they want to convert. Not they, children, if they want to convert. This whole kind of thing is a little weird. That fits in with the new faith that they're trying to impose as the cult of the United States. I mean, look at it. You can't put in that same school a crucifix. You can't put in there a six-pointed Jewish star. You can't put in the Islamic crescent. You can't put in Shiva's six-armed God form. You cannot put in an image of Buddha, but you can put that rainbow flag in there all day long. The White House decorates itself in rainbow colors. You can't have Easter eggs with anything religious on them, but you can have them in rainbow colors. You have a gay celebration. You had the spectacle of the rainbow crowd flashing bare bosoms
with children.
White House, with children on the White House lawn. I mean, what's going on here? You've got floats that have police on motorcycles escorting them, and you've got naked males up there with their penises hanging out, and some silly little idiot mama saying, "Honey, go up there and pull the man's thing. He wants you to pull on it." And
terrible.
It's like you lost your mind. And then the interesting thing about it is this coalition is going to have some problems anyway, because you've got, let's see, L, lesbians, G, gays, B, bisexuals, T, that got added later, that's the trannies, and then you got T, LGBT, and then you've got Q, which stands for queer and questioning, LGBTQI, which is intersectionality, and then you get the A, all others, which you put in there. So you bring in trannies who fake what they are, but a lot of the gay boys don't want to wind up thinking they've got a guy and it turns out to be a girl because they don't like girls. And a lot of the gay girls don't want to sit over there and lust after what they think is a cute girl and he's got a penis. And that other intersectionality that brings in pedophiles who turned out, a lot of them, that put them in the position they find themselves, and they resent that. So this isn't necessarily a healthy coalition. So when you get all of these things in place, you really get a mess going, and this confusion gets put out to the public. Like, look at it. What are your pronouns? This is even, you get an iPhone, like I'm doing this through, And now they, with the latest updates, when you go to your contacts, it says pronouns. That's absolutely ridiculous. You're either he, she, or it. So now somebody has special pronouns, so you're supposed to butcher the English language, which too few of us know how to use and manipulate anyway. So instead of saying I am here, or he is here, or she is here, you're supposed to say they is here, or do you go to the royal plural and say they are here, which is appropriate, and you expect to see a lot of somebody's walking in, but you say they is here? What did you just do to butcher the English language? Now, everybody all over the world in air or marine transportation and communications uses English. It's the international language. So we're supposed to butcher the language at home so we can deal with some perverts who have a particular way of looking at what they do. Some kid wanted to get mad at me. I have my pronouns, you won't use it. I said, look, kid, I don't even know what the devil your name is. Don't care, don't want to know, and I'm certainly not going to remember it. So if you want me to use your pronoun, tattoo it on your forehead, and then I'm not going to use it then because I'll think you're too big a fool to deal with. Now, you're either he, she, or it, and I don't give a damn. You don't like it, do something about it. I may be an old man, but I've been taking martial arts for 58 years, and you will find you do not like what happens to you. Because I don't even have to work up a sweat to do you a whole lot of harm, dude. And my brother was listed for 15 years as, quote, probably the most dangerous human alive in North America, and unquote. And if you want to look him up, look up the late Clifford Stewart of Los Angeles. I think they've got an article on him, bodyguard for the stars. And he was more than that. And you just look at this guy, Pinat Silat. He was one of the Pindeckers, only 3 in the whole world. He was the only one under 90. He had his own discipline, within arm's reach, acronym WAR, and he had 5 members of SEAL Team 6 on the Bin Laden raid that were his students. He had 14 black belts in karate, 10th Dan in 9 of them. He was a kung fu grandmaster and had black belts in judo and jiu-jitsu. Been studying the stuff since 1960, and we had a compact. I taught him how to shoot. He taught me martial arts, and we've been going at that. Unfortunately, he died as a result of an operation where the anesthesia went bad, trying to correct some problems he got in various and sundry combats in the real world. Now, you want to mess with me, and I'm thinking this in my head, come on, we'll have fun, make my day. You know, we can do the dirty, hairy thing, go back to 1971 or 2 when they had that. That's fun, and I'll be justified. And, oh, I'm a 70-year-old somebody, and this young man decided he was going to pick on me. I mean, it was just reflexive. I didn't mean to hurt him that bad. I really
didn't. Well, I'm looking him up right now, and I see him on the other page. I can't pull him because some of the videos that I do see are from other people, so I wouldn't be able to utilize it because you know how they like to get funny around here.
I know, but let me say this.
But I see him.
He wrote 6 books, and now get this. Not only was he that kind of guy, he also graduated from UCLA and Cal State LA at the same time. He had a degree from Cal State in geology and petroleum production, and he graduated magna cum laude, and he was in television and motion picture production at UCLA and graduated summa cum laude. He was Muhammad Ali's bodyguard, Mr. T's bodyguard, long-term bodyguard. He was bodyguard for Larry Flint for years, the editor and owner of Hustler magazine. Joan Collins, you name it, Wesley Snipes, he was his bodyguard and confidant and instructor.
Wow.
You remember when we had 911 and everybody was upset about letting these Saudi Arabians out of the country the day after? Why didn't they hold them? Well, Cliff was chief of security for the sheikh, who at that time was next in line for the Saudi throne. The man ran Saudi counterintelligence, Cliff was his chief executive. Saudi counterintelligence was providing the U.S. government with intelligence on operations in the Middle East. And guess what? Talking about Kamala, this man was born in California. He grew up in California, went to public schools, kindergarten through grad school, finished up at the University of California. His wife was born in the United States. All of his children were born in the United States. He was eligible for running for U.S. president. And you don't have him left around at risk when he's such a valuable asset to the United States of America. That's why they got him out, and Cliff was on the airplane with him to make the arrangements. So, yeah, you have these people that us old folk know that some young people don't know, and we have our own adventures where you can sit there and say, yeah, that was interesting. If I had to do it again, would I do it the same way? And I'm not talking about whether you do it, it's just how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are all of these things out there that are unobvious. So be careful what you're into and what you think is going on, because I learned early on to listen to people who were veterans of something. Had you been through this kind of trial before? Had you had this kind of case before? Had you been shot at before? What happens when you're actually in a gunfight? Is it like what they try to put in the movies, or is it something else? You're out there on the streets. Who is it you actually have to look for? The guy that's the badass, excuse my language, or the guy that's the scariest thing out there? Who do you look for? You see, what do you do when you're looking at body language? Guys, how do you know if what time it is, and what are you showing when you finally get intimate with somebody? What can you tell? There are all kinds of things that you can learn, and you should, but people forget these.
And they like to discount the elders. No, you're absolutely fine, because they do like to discount the elders, which is the reason why I lean so heavily on, having my circle of people be people who are intelligent elders. Why? Because the information that's within you, I want that to come. I need that information so that I am, I have situational awareness. I know exactly what I'm looking at. I understand the history of things. I believe that, right now we were going to be doing a story. Actually, I have the cues up for it, dealing with, and I know this is off the topic, but dealing with AI and how it is now helping to prevent older people from getting jobs, because the AI, as a matter of fact, is just kicking those applications and kicking those resumes out. So it's now the day of the dodo, because now you've got, literally, to use that term interchangeably, now you got these young people who don't know how to do anything, and you go into a store and you're trying to figure out, why can't they count cash back if the machine is messed up? I just gave you a quarter and that just threw you all off. When my total was, X, I give you an extra quote. I got the change. They can't figure it out. But that is the reason why I surround myself with intelligent people who are older than me.
And by the way, look what they're doing around the country. The state of Washington no longer requires that lawyers take nor pass a bar exam. Oregon no longer requires that, and there are enough dumb bunnies out there masquerading as lawyers with absolutely no experience, who disgrace the profession with their incompetence. And a lot of them, some of them have national reputations that they've never tried a case, which, that's like getting a referral to a doctor, walking in the office, seeing the degrees, and then you find out that doctor has never been an intern or a resident any place. But, it's intriguing what you get when you get into the backgrounds. It's even stuff like putting together your life. Okay, I was a professional photographer, all right? I dated a lot. I grew up in the 60s, sexual revolution. What can I tell you about everybody's fate? Well, most people's favorite indoor topic, okay? How do you tell what somebody's really about? What is it going to be like? Well, let's take what photography puts in there. I'm talking about everybody's favorite indoor sport, co-ed push-ups. Let's put it that way. Not everybody, but most normal people. All right. You've seen people that say, "Oh, I'm not photogenic," and you look at them, they look halfway decent. What's the problem? Why do you think you're not photogenic? Well, it's this. When I'm talking to you, you and I are looking at each other right now. We are not only exchanging verbal communications, messaging, but we're conveying two other kinds of subliminal messages. It's tone and body language. So when you're face to face with a person, 15% of what you're saying consists of the words you use. 35% consists of the tones you use, and 50% is the body language signals. This is open, this is reserved and withdrawn, all kinds of stuff. All right. Now, when a person is unphotogenic, what's happening is when the camera goes click, what are they doing? They're broadcasting a very negative message. The camera picks it up. And when the person or anybody else sees it, they say, what's wrong with this picture? They can't tell. It's because of the message. Now, let's say you develop some intimacy with somebody. What are you really getting? Well, they aren't talking, though maybe some people talk while they have sex or talk dirty or whatever it may be, but that's not really what's going on. It's nonverbal communication, 100% nonverbal communication. It's all body language.
Absolutely.
So what is the person saying with their body language? Is it favorable? Is it something that's selfish? Is it generosity? Is it concern? Is it I don't give a damn attitude? What is it that the person's saying to you? So you really never get a chance to see what a person's real inner personality is until you make love to them. Sometimes that's very ill-advised because it's just not the right thing to do. It's about timing, strike when the iron's hot, when there is an interest, keep the interest from being too prurient and somewhat based on the individual as a person, but it's body language communication. What are you doing? See, I could tell a young guy and he might not want to listen. Oh man, you can't get out. Yeah, well, let's put it this way. I've been listening here with a couple of my friends, and we have been listening to you brag, but your lifetime total, some of us has exceeded in 1 week. When it's a good week, so you might ask us how we did that. It might be fun. And I think you're going with the wrong kind of woman. Man, look at the booty. Man, what's that got to do with anything? You can't even see it with all of that. Then you might like it. But, quit dealing with life in terms of all of the cliches and start finding out what it's about. Why are you here? That is something that I have not heard anybody address on the blue side. It's you're here to enjoy yourself. That's what they say. But is that why you're here? Because that basically means it's nihilistic. You have no purpose. Why are you here? Do you have a cause? What are you doing? And by the way, answering that question or giving somebody the ability to develop their own answers to that question is what dropped the recidivism rate in my courtroom for felonies over a 10-year period of study from 80%, more than 80%, to 18 and dropping. I gave them a purpose, a cause. It wasn't just everything's dumping on me. It's like, okay, yeah, it's rough. Could be a lion or a tiger out there to eat you up if it was long enough ago, but it's not. Okay, you don't have any daylight at the end of your tunnel. Don't despair. That gives you the opportunity to be a hero so you can go out and slay the fire-breathing Gila monsters that are setting fire to the tunnel and obscuring the view to the end with all of the smoke. Go kill the dragons. Then you'll be a hero, and if you die, you're going to die anyway. At least people will think about you favorably instead of, yeah, man, everybody's glad you're gone. So have a purpose and a cause. What are you here for? Be able to look in the mirror every morning and say, dude, did you do what you were supposed to do yesterday?
That's an important question.
Are you going to practice so you can do what you need to do tomorrow? In other words, have obligations, duties, have responsibilities, understand consequences. We're not taught that. And the blue side of things is trying to avoid exposing you to consequences. Remember, you just lost. You came in dead last, but you get a participation ribbon just like the guy that came in first place. You didn't win a class election. They don't want your feelings hurt, so you get appointed to be class president. You come in and you have never won a primary. You have dropped out of all of them. That was 4 years ago. You haven't been through a primary since. You haven't been voting on the convention floor. You just got appointed. That entitlement stuff. See, you haven't done anything successful. You just happen to be in the right place at the right time, taking advantage of your hookup with Willie Brown to get the good connection.
Thank you.
And when you're 20-some years old, getting paid $72,000 a year, which is about $180,000 now, and then you ramped up to $120,000 for 20 hours worth a week. That's $240,000 for a full-time job, and that was 30 years ago. That would be $750,000 a year now.
Now today,
or a
that's
full
right.
million. So you just got big time in your 20s. You got financial soundness. You got the connections on the top level, and you happen to be in the right place at the right time. And you were familiar with the Kamasutra.
So I want to ask you. I want to ask you about something, because I really do feel like, a whole lot of people got shafted in that they voted for Biden to be their, presidential candidate coming up. And so he moves out the way and they just anoint her or appoint her. How unconstitutional, if at all, was that whole transaction? Was it at all?
It's not unconstitutional. It's just dirty. In other words, they timed this and they set up the fake thing for the specific purpose of making it too late for you to have a choice. You notice that the Democratic Party did not let anyone who was aspiring to be the nominee instead of Biden debate him. There were no debates. So it was a closed door slam dunk deal. What happened is we didn't even have the convention, smoke-filled rooms behind closed doors. What we had was virtual, by phone, on computer. We don't know what really happened
at all.
So who got to participate, and how many people did they have going to a convention? 3,400, and then a significantly large percentage of them are super delegates under the Democratic Party system, which allows them to override regular delegates. So that's 3,400 people. Let's divide 3,400 by 360 million. That's a round estimate of how many people there are in the United States. It comes out 0.0000, a whole lot of zeros before you get to a significant number. And that's the small infinitesimal percentage of people that decide who will be allowed to run as a candidate for president of the United States of America. And remember, if you get a real good clown circus, the balloons that go up are not going to be just filled with helium. They're going to be nuclear helium bombs, thermonuclear warheads throwing up the balloons. Different kind of situation. So what is this? What kind of bamboozlement is this? This is consistent with, we've got a new cause that we have to spread around the world because no one needs to feel inferior. Everyone's self-esteem is more important than everyone else's welfare. And oh my God, she was shamed for being 480 pounds at 16 because she couldn't control herself, and her mama was not sophisticatedly into medicine or medical conceptions of things to take her poor daughter to the doctor to get treated for what is possibly a glandular deficiency. You know,
Yes.
I'll mention the name. And one reason I talked about her for a while, a friend of mine said, Joe, can you talk to my granddaughter? I said, how is she doing, by the way? She takes after you. Last I checked, she's going to be a beautiful woman. Grandmama was fine, fine, fine. Still is. So anyway, she hooks me up with this three-way conversation with her daughter on the phone. Says, baby, tell Judge Brown why I had to stop you from eating that whole loaf of white bread. Well, I want to be beautiful, Grandmama. I said, by eating a whole loaf of bread? Yeah, I want to be fat like Lizzo.
Oh, wow.
Like, really? See, and that is the imagery of somebody in a position. Now, let's put it this way. I've been alluding to something politely by referring to it as knowledge of the Kamasutra.
Mm-hmm.
But how many women, black, white, brown, red, yellow, have been victimized because they've been put up as sexual objects?
Mm-hmm. Plenty.
Bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, you want the President of the United States of America in front of the world and in front of the youth of the country to be somebody who is a notorious harlot by her own admission, by well-reported circumstances, and that's what you want everybody to assume, since that's supposed to either be the best of the best. That's supposed to stand for American womanhood.
Wow.
I don't think that's good.
I don't think that's good. Mm-mm.
And wait a minute, you have to understand, this woman is 60 years old. She was born in
we're the same age.
1964.
Yeah,
So,
we're a month apart.
Just think about it. She tries to act like she's Miss Hot to Trot Hot thing, just came out the dormitories in school. Now, did I go into the thing about Tupac earlier?
No, but I'm going to give you the whole screen to go into that one.
Well, let me go into that one. See, truth, it's not within this woman.
Mm-mm.
She brags about, when I was in the dorms, I inhaled, I smoked dope, and I was listening to Tupac. Well, when she was in the dorms, Tupac was all of 11 years old. And when Tupac released his first single, he was 21. The first hit, he was 23. And what wound up happening is when he was 21, she was an assistant prosecutor with the Alameda County District Attorney's Office, assigned a special heavy load of prosecuting simple possession of marijuana cases. So you want us to believe that when she is a practicing legal officer, legal official in the criminal justice system, she was in the dorms? Whoa, that's kind of retarded, isn't it?
Liar, just a straight liar.
She was smoking dope while she's prosecuting for smoking dope. And Willie Brown was going to get away with telling his wife, baby, I'm going over to the dorms again to talk to some students. Ain't buying it. And then let's listen to the other one. I like to cook, and I'd cook up a whole pot of greens, and I'd clean my greens in the bathtub. Come on now. You know your mama would beat you to death.
Oh, my mama would have told me up in her bathroom, in the bathtub. I would have got told up.
And where everybody's smelly behind was in there, no telling what kind of soap they were using to wash the funk off. Mm-hmm. And they had skid marks in their panties and tighty whities, and they got in there, and you were going to fix up some greens and that. And then how many greens are you cooking? You
that was the main pandering.
Dormitory? That was just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's just like, straight pandering. And it was embarrassment to herself, because not to me. I just thought for everybody who wants to attach themselves with her for saying that she's black, that's just like, that was actually worse than Clinton with the hot sauce in her purse when it was convenient. That, you know, it's that.
I was going to bring that up.
It's that, and it's the whole Meg the Stallion in Atlanta. It's you know, it's this stuff that I just cannot understand, how people cannot see that this is pandering, and that it should be offensive to those that it's not offensive to. You should be offended.
VTHEE Stallion, who names herself after a male
horse,
was to draw. All these people are getting a free concert, which how much does a concert ticket to see one of her performances cost? And Kamala has people walking out on her as soon as she gets up to speak. They didn't come there to see her. She's got one where she's talking about all of these people coming up at an airport when Air Force Two lands, and who was it that they were coming to check out? The famous white female artist.
Was it Taylor Swift?
Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
And then see how the press plays it. When Vance walked up to her airplane accompanied by his Secret Service, the Secret Service for her got out of the way. And he said, I just came to look at my new airplane. That's going to be mine next year. And she doesn't have the nerve to come down here and talk to you reporters. What did you ask her? She's not answering. And then see New Yorker and Vanity, they want to say he embarrassed himself. No, it didn't. That was a slick move. That's called running the dozens. We used to do that in elementary, junior, and high school when I was growing up. Hey, man, I don't want to say nothing about your mama, man, but, you know, he cracked on her big time tough. And then he's getting on, what is Tampon Tim's thing? What it was, I don't know whether it was a true article, but did you read about the old article where he supposedly got his stomach pumped?
Oh, I have it. I have the article. I have the article. But, you know, I just tell you, you know, but see, that goes into the ritualistic side of that whole dark piece of this plane, of this planet. You know what I mean? That's part of that dark piece. And I did read it. And you know, I did see where people were trying to say that it wasn't real. And hey, I don't have a dog in that hunt. What I do have to say is I have the actual article. And I looked at the actual article.
Can you send me that? Can you send me
I sure can. I'll send it to you now.
I've got somebody from the New York Post that wants that article to see if it's true. Can you send it to me?
Yeah, I can send it to you, because I tell you, to me, you know, it was disgusting. But it's indicative of the whole thing that I was looking at about in 2016 when we were hearing different stories about different people. And it just really, 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 really is it's disgusting.
Boy. It's Ippy boy. Epstein.
You see, Abramovich and everybody else that's like into these different, the whole spirit cooking thing, and that conversation that was taking place several years ago. And so it's these kinds of things that concern me, that if they are true, because I have to say allegedly, until we've got the story verified, but I have to say allegedly, these are the things that are being touted out there. But here's the deal. Even if these things are alleged and then they come out that, you know, there is some validity to them, and you still go out there and you cast your vote for an individual that is a party to this, and then you say, oh, well, at least they were not convicted 34 times. We need to be able to juxtapose those two to see if the levity, if the weight even is even, you know, conducive to you casting the vote. Do they even balance out? They don't balance out. If you're saying, well, at least he's not convicted. He may have done that, but at least he's not convicted, and I'm gonna vote for blue no matter who. That kind of stuff is the stuff that makes me scratch my head and wonder what type of voodoo and witchcraft are people under right now, because that's wickedness.
Let me say this. Knowledge is dangerous. A little bit of knowledge is dangerous too, for the wrong reasons. But look, I was in this criminal justice system for 50 years. I looked at those 34 counts, which should have been misdemeanors, except they involved the breaking of federal law, which is not state jurisdiction. That's not New York's business. But I looked at it, and myself, other criminal court judges, other criminal lawyers, we all saw the same thing. Not every one of us, but let's say the majority that counts. And that's this: in order to pay somebody in order to commit the crime of paying hush money to somebody, there has to be a crime that's hushed. In order to prove that somebody paid hush money as a criminal offense, you have to prove the underlying offense beyond a reasonable doubt. There was no such. After repeated defense demands that the judge charged the jury with what is New York law, as best I can read it, that the state has to prove that, one, Trump committed an underlying crime, and two, he paid money out to hush it. The judge refused to charge that to the jury, and there was no proof of any underlying crime being hushed. And in fact, we have an interesting situation. When you have hush money paid out to quiet something that's not a crime, guess what it is? It's called being blackmailed. So Trump was the victim of felony blackmail because he had to pay Stormy Daniels. And the way Stormy Daniels testified, it struck me in my experience is she had gotten threatened with blackmailing Trump if she did not cooperate with the prosecution, with Bragg. And she got up there and went at great length to talk about their sexual picadillos, which, by the way, was totally irrelevant to the charges in the case. And defense objection that it was salacious, any probative value being far exceeded by the prejudicial effect. It should have never been allowed, and such as came in should have been stricken. That was not the case. The judge did something that's absolutely horrible. His daughter and his wife had a vested interest in the outcome of the case, and both of them had cause to badly want Trump convicted. The daughter was handling millions of dollars in funds trying to get Trump defeated, and the wife was just adamantly opposed, almost as a fervent belief in right and wrong, that something had to be done with Trump. And for years, judges have been taught at the various judicial conferences, whenever there is a family member, a spouse, a sibling, a child, niece, nephew, or close business associate who has an interest in the outcome, take yourself off the case. First, disclose it as to what it is. Ask the parties if they want you to continue, and if they don't, get off. This judge, after repeated demands, refused to get off. Now, that's just inappropriate. He put a gag order against Trump, which interfered with his campaigning. But his wife, he couldn't gag, and she continued to badmouth Trump incessantly, as did his daughter. So he couldn't talk about them or reply to them until somebody straightened him out. And then he got to reply if it was political. You know, that's interjecting due process into the mix of criminal justice, not to make it due process of law, but to subvert criminal justice, to use it as an instrument of repression of political activity. That's lawfare. That's the new name. There is no way on earth that those 34 convictions are going to stand upon appellate review. It was a horrid transgression upon the sanctity of American law. But there is that.
I want to ask, what is it going to take for Trump to win?
Being very carefully attentive to what's happening with the electoral process, and before that, the process of selecting the electors. There's cheating, rampant cheating going on. I was just down in Georgia, and we were reviewing some of the reports from the Georgia commissions that were finding and agreeing there was massive electoral corruption that occurred in this last election. There were requirements about recordation of ballots that were not adhered to. There were ballots that were destroyed, removed. They were unattended. There was this thing of some 80-some thousand ballots down in Atlanta were left unattended when an arena supposedly flooded and caused the evacuation with the ballots unattended and unsecured. And then they have evidence that people were coming in there, shall we say, paying attention to them when nobody but them was looking. We have a lot of things. We have a report that came out for Shelby County, that's here where Memphis is, and it was a quarterly report, and it followed up the Justice Department's main report to the country in January 2021 that there were no significant discrepancies in the election for 2020 in November. But yet the report that was the quarterly report, it continued though since 2006, where the Justice Department found that the voting machines in Shelby County, Memphis, Tennessee were hopelessly hacked, and that there hadn't been a fair election since they'd been installed in 2000. And they found that in January 2021, that once again, the election in Shelby County, which is a pretty large urban area, if I say so myself, was not really valid because it too was hacked. So what are we supposed to take? One of them is a mistruth and one of them is reliable? What's the deal? By the way, 2008, the Justice Department put up money from confiscated drug money to replace each one of these corrupted machines. So it round up that by 2020, Memphis, Tennessee was the only one of 2 counties in the whole United States that was still using these machines. Haywood County used them up until recently, and just one election before last, for the local elections, Memphis and Shelby County was the only place in America that was using them. California used them, Ohio used them, Hawaii used them, and Florida used a version of them. You remember the Gangling Chad mess down in Florida with the 2000 Bush Gore thing. You'll remember what was going on. Gore was leading in Ohio, and then all of a sudden overnight it turned around, he wasn't. Well, they used the deballed voting machines, and the machines were sold on the basis of, from any one machine, you can access the results of all of the machines in the system. Well, various independent entities and the Justice Department analyzed that and said, because of that, you can hack the whole system from any one machine. And California published an online pamphlet describing how, and they did that to discourage any other entity from using those same deballed voting machines. But Memphis, Shelby County, Tennessee continued to do so. And they only wound up buying the new machines 2 election cycles ago, which they let stay in a warehouse for 18 months. Because the Justice Department apparently threatened to sue individually each person on the county commission that was blocking the acquisition. Now, as far as these new machines go, I know because I watched 2 people cheat on these machines and turn in 2 ballots, which got counted. I watched them. Don't know who they are, but I saw them do it. And there's no way of correlating who turned in what ballot. And you have the interesting situation that there were more ballots cast than people showed up at a particular polling place. So do we have fair elections, and is that unfairness, that crookedness, that cheating going to expand? Is this why they're so confident? Because remember, they've got a new faith, and it is so worthy that beyond, by any means necessary.
And that is what really is concerning to me. I do look at all the things, and we did the show the other night where we were talking about, since she doesn't have a platform, I'm going to build a platform for her based on her past. So I'm going to play a little quick link that I have here. And I want to understand a couple of things. Do you think that the things that she took part in California, even all the way down to, and by she, I mean Kamala Harris, all the way down to not releasing people from jail when they should have been released? Can you speak to that? Because I remember that people were supposed to be out in February, and instead they didn't get out until like March or maybe even June or July. And these individuals were, I think it was, I forgot which telecom companies, but there were telecom companies that they were working for in jail. I want to talk about that. Because.
Well, yeah.
Mhm.
What that's about is she opposed and blocked the release of people who had served their time because she wanted them as free labor.
Okay, it looks like we lost him there. It looks like his something came loose, so when he'll probably come back out in a second. But I'm going to go on ahead for those people who did not get a chance to see what we put up the other day. I'm going to deal with the specific portion that dealt with the trafficking conversation, because here she is
Testing,
talking
1, 2,
about
3, 4, testing,
Yep,
testing.
yep. You're
1, 2,
back.
3, 4.
You are back. We can see you. Can you
Can you
hear
hear
us?
me now?
Yes, I hear you. Can you hear us?
I can't hear you. Say something.
Testing 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2,
I
1.
can't hear you. Oh,
3, 2,
boy.
1. I'm not even muted either.
I'm gonna have to go out and come back in. That was an
Okay,
interesting
going out
point.
and come back
So
in. No
let me
problem
come
at
back
all.
in. I'll say
Yes,
this and
sir.
then I'll come back in if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
What it was is these people were ready to be released, and she blocked their release so she could get their free labor. Also, there's a young man that just collected $13.1 million because he was held on death row for several years because Kamala refused to release exculpatory evidence on him until the California Supreme Court ordered her to do so. And when that was released, he wound up a free man. So she's done this kind of thing. There's another.
Well, I don't think it's a secret as to what exactly is going on. So let me go on ahead. He'll get all of that together. We already know what's up. Everybody knows what's going on here. What we're going to do is we are going to take a look. I'm going to pull him off and let him come back in so that it will be a fresh link, not even a fresh link, but for him to come in with a clean path. So it won't be any problems. But what I do want to do is I want to listen to this right here. We're going to listen to her give her take on why she's done what she did back in 2010 with the book. Anyway, here you
Another
go.
area that I believe requires focus in terms of this smart on crime approach, if you will, is the issue in general of crimes that impact women. And in particular, I'll talk about two. One is the issue of human trafficking, and the other is the issue of domestic violence. And in addressing both, what I believe we must do to achieve the intended goal of ending or reducing crimes against women, and in particular crimes of violence against women, what we must do is we must address it from a three-pronged approach, which includes, of course, the prosecution, i.e. consequence for bad behavior and punishment. It should include recognizing that we have to think about it in terms of public education. And often with a lot of crimes, what that means is encouraging victims to report, knowing that when they do, they will not be judged. And three, it involves empowering the victim through the process and when the process is over. So how does that relate to these two crimes, human trafficking and domestic violence? Well, human trafficking is a crime that we've been talking a lot about. There's actually some very exciting legislation being proposed right now by Assemblyman Sandre Swanson out of Oakland to address the fact that when it is a girl, a young girl under the age of 18 who is being trafficked, the law should not require that we prove that she was forced, physically forced to do that thing that she's being essentially forced to do. The fact of her age and her youth should be enough to prove that when she has been brought across state border or brought into the country from another place, and she is in a sweatshop, or she is in a place that is called a massage parlor, but in fact has been forced into prostitution, and she is 15 years old, the law should not have to prove that she was forced to do that to show that it is a crime for anyone to subject her to that kind of situation. So human trafficking is an issue that has been around for a long time, but it's also an issue that, because of the vulnerability of the victim, and in particular, the likelihood that she will not speak English, that this culture will be foreign to her, and because she has probably come from a place where she learned to distrust law enforcement, or she's been told to distrust law enforcement here, she'll not report the crime. And because the crime takes place in a situation that is a sweatshop or is a brothel purporting to be a massage parlor, it is a crime that takes place in the shadows. And so it is not necessarily the subject of a community meeting of outrage or concern about crimes that are happening in their community, which means that it pretty much becomes overlooked as a real problem for the society or community in which we live. So human trafficking is one of those issues that does require a smart on crime approach. And what we've done is we actually, a couple of years ago in California, through the leadership of then Assemblywoman Sally Lieber, wrote a bill, which we all went up to Sacramento and testified about, saying this should be a state crime. And in recognizing that it's a crime in the state of California, let's also be smart, again, about recognizing what is at play, the pathology of what is occurring. So what we did is we wrote into the legislation, not only that there would be a criminal consequence, which includes significant jail or prison time for the person who transports the girl or woman into the country or into the state or into the city from Las Vegas. We will also recognize the motivation behind this crime is almost entirely financial profit and gain. So recognizing the nature of it, we wrote into the law, not only will there be the criminal consequence of the penalty of confinement, once guilt has been proven, we will allow the victim to walk into a civil courtroom and sue the perpetrator for the money gained from their illegal conduct. And in that way, through this legislation, we, I believe, have been smart in recognizing that we want to go to the heart of the matter. And it will be not only about this predator being concerned that they may be locked up in jail, but be concerned about the fact that we're going to strip their bank account of all of their ill-gotten gains.
Okay.
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we hear you.
Well,
we hear you. Go ahead.
Hollywood, you notice she doesn't never look straight ahead on the screen. What's going ahead is that there are transparent screens to her left and right, and what she's reading are scrolling through there. So to give the illusion that you're saying it off the top of your head for the camera, it's going on both of them, so you can look from left to right and you can read it as though, and you're gesturing. That's what they teach you to do, so it looks like it's live and unscripted when it actually is. Okay, now, ain't that something? Where were we before? Oh, yeah, not letting people out of. Oh, one other comment on that.
Yes.
When somebody gets out of through doing time in the penitentiary, unless they're Epstein, they're not going to have any money. That is BS, because there's nothing for the person to get. Unlike the false impression of reality you get from these TV judge shows, is that there is not money out there. You can spend a lot of money winning the case and you won't collect $1, and it winds up becoming a Pyrrhic victory because you get nothing. So what usually happens is you can't get a lawyer, you can't get anything else, because the person you're going to sue is judgment proof. So they have no money. So that's an empty promise. What are you going to get out? Nothing. This is not TV where the show guarantees to pay any judgment that's awarded. So there you go. So when you have an empty promise, that's like San Francisco saying they're going to pay everybody $9.5 million reparations, when what the truth of it is California is not only flat broke busted, but they have what they call ballot initiatives. So for a statewide ballot, you need 25,000 signatures. You need 2,500 for a local one. And if they pass that, that would be put on the ballot as a ballot initiative. It would be defeated. California is 54% Hispanic and 48% of the registered voters are Hispanic. That's not going to ride in California. That's just an example of specious grandstanding. Now, back to this thing. These people were in jail, and they were wrongfully in jail, or they were trying to get in jail, which is the worst case. There was one that made the news out there where 6 families had lost their loved ones to this one killer who just went on a rampage. So it had drug on for year after year, and Kamala was trying to grandstand it for political gain. So they wrote her a collective letter, a joint letter saying, please, this man's offering to plead guilty to life without possibility of parole. Please let him do so and stop using and abusing the families who want closure on this situation by trying to get political gain out of it. We don't want him on death row. We'd rather him suffer for the rest of his life in a penitentiary. And finally, when it drew just some horrible attention, then he got, I don't even know, it still carried on. He was trying to enter that plea. It may still be pending all these years later. She was like that.
You know, I get a little overwhelmed when I see, you know, these type of things done, especially to people that, for example, she's standing up saying that these are the people that she's representing and she's for the downtrodden. The only thing I've ever really seen her stand up for is abortion. That's it. I mean, that's all I've ever seen. And I mean, she's eloquent, trippingly off the tongue.
You might want to check with Angela Stanton King on that one. Now,
you know,
about Kamala and that particular subject. But let me say something else too. 1,200 women, mostly Black and Hispanic, got locked up behind her supposed truancy crackdown.
We have that. Can I play the soundbite for you?
Yes, go right.
Okay, let's play that. Here you go. Watch her lie.
Another focus of the book, in large part, is on the issue of children. Well, that's not a tough topic. Tough people don't talk about children. Children aren't the big issues. Children are the cute, cuddly people that moms and parents and other nice people concern themselves with. Let's instead address big issues. I think that's a myth. And so, in fact, in the way that I wrote the book, the first half of the book, I talk about what I think are myths about the criminal justice system that have impeded our ability to have smarter criminal justice policy. And in the second half of the book, I talk about what I believe are best practices as have been proven around the country. It's a myth to think that to address and prioritize issues impacting children is to deal with a small issue instead of dealing with some other big issue, like, let's say, homicides. It's a myth to assume and think that children are resilient. It is a myth to think that to deal with big issues is to actually take on a battle and achieve great success, instead of recognizing to take on issues that impact children is to do so much more effectively and efficiently for less money and greater reward. So in that vein, I talk about what I believe is one of the biggest issues that we could actually confront in a way that we will be successful. And that is the big issue of elementary school truancy. So what am I talking about? In San Francisco a few years ago, we had a rash of homicides, the highest we had experienced in decades. So every one of us in city leadership was concerned, and I asked a staff member, go out and do an assessment and tell me who were our homicide victims who were under the age of 25 when they were killed. And the data came back, and it included the fact that 94% of those homicide victims were high school dropouts. So then I went over to the school district and I asked the superintendent at the time, what's going on? And she said, Kamala, well, of the few number of children we have in the San Francisco Unified School District, 5,500 have been designated as habitually and chronically truant. And of the 5,500, 2,400 are elementary school students. So I asked the superintendent to convene a meeting for me with all of the principals and administrators of the school district, and I shared with them a fact about myself, which I talk about in the book. I'm a product of California Public Schools. My first grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, God rest her soul, attended my law school graduation. I would not be standing here were it not for the education I received. And I know many of us will say the same thing. And I believe a child going without an education is tantamount to a crime. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco. And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned because we didn't know at the time whether I was going to have an opponent in my reelection race. But I said, look, I'm done. This is a serious issue, and I've got a little political capital, and I'm going to spend some of it. And this is what we did. We recognized that in that initiative, as a prosecutor and law enforcement, I have a huge stick. The school district has got a carrot. Let's work in tandem around our collective objective and goal, which is to get those kids in school. So to that end, on my letterhead, now let me tell you something about my letterhead. When you're the DA of a major city in this country, usually the job comes with a badge. And there is often an artistic rendering of said badge on your stationery. So I sent a letter out on my letterhead to every parent in the school district, outlining the connection that was statistically proven between elementary school truancy, high school dropouts, who will become a victim of crime, and who will become a perpetrator of crime. We sent it out to everyone. A friend of mine actually called me and he said, Kamala, my wife got the letter. She freaked out. She brought all the kids into the living room, held up the letter, said, if you don't go to school, Kamala's going to put you and me in jail. Yes, we achieved intended effect. And here's what we also did. We created what we call the DA mediation program, where we assigned prosecutors to go and sit with the administrators and principals when they met with all the parents. And frankly, you know the prosecutors in my office who volunteered to do this? My homicide prosecutors, my gang prosecutors. And they went over there and I said, when you go over there, look really mean. And so they did. And invariably the parents said, well, who's the mean looking dude? And the principal would say, well, that's someone that mean DA Kamala Harris sent over here because she said she's going to start prosecuting you if we can't work this out. And through that initiative, we found cases like the case of the woman who was by herself, raising her 3 children, holding down 2 jobs, and homeless. She just needed some help. But by shining this infrared spotlight of public safety on the fact that her children aren't in school, we were able to figure that out, get her access to services that exist. And through that process, the attendance of her children improved. We dismissed the charges against her. And overall, we've improved attendance for this population in San Francisco by 20% over the last 2 years. So in the beginning, some would say, why are you dealing with that? We've got serious crime to deal with. Well, I would suggest to you that being smart on crime means realizing we cannot accept false choices. One is not to the exclusion of the other. We have cracked down on violent crime and seen success that has not been achieved in over a decade. And yes, we are also focusing on the issue of elementary school children.
Okay, so folks that were here the other day, you guys remember seeing this. And you also remember that what we showed after that was a probation officer who was involved in this, laying out what really happened on the other side. Okay, go ahead, Judge.
She's a liar. That's not
big liar
going on. Secondly, that's not how you do it. I actually did it. And like I said, I reduced the recidivism rate in the offenders in my courtroom from north of 80% down to 18%. It was dropping when I retired. It's not how you do it. And you still have to explain the 1,000 plus a couple of hundred who got locked up. You still have to explain what your policies were. And you also need to explain to the public what the hell was funny enough about that for you to start breaking into those insane cackles. Something's wrong.
Yeah, something is definitely wrong.
And you know, Hillary always used to grin about everything. Oh, that's not funny. Why are you giving us that shit-eating? Excuse me.
Nah, go ahead.
And then her doing that cackling. Something's wrong with that woman.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely something wrong with her. And I said that the other day. When I looked, I said, you know, there's nothing funny about what you did. And there's definitely nothing funny with the outcome. There is a mother, and I believe we were going to talk about, was it Cherie Peoples as an example? There was a woman who had a daughter who was suffering with sickle cell anemia. And for people who know folks that have sickle cell, you know that that's not something that you can pinpoint when it's going to flare up. This young little girl was ill, and the mother had already been working with the school And what ended up happening was the mom ended up being carted off to jail in the front of cameras, just so that, you know, she would be able to have this as a gotcha moment. Here's the thing. If a kid doesn't go to school, I believe none of these school systems would give two rips if it were not for the money that was attached to each bum in a seat. And by bum, I mean like the European word for bottom, right? So if you don't have a bottom in the seat, you're not getting money from somewhere. And that is really what this was all about, as well as all of the fines that this woman mentions here. Judge, do you have a moment for me to play what this woman experienced?
I'm listening.
Okay, go ahead and comment.
I've heard it. I heard that last one before, but go ahead.
Okay, let me give you this one here. This one, we have permission to use this from the Philip Scott Show. The African Diaspora channel is the channel that I want everybody to find this on. I do not own what I'm about to play. However, he has given us permission to play it, okay? This is from a woman who will tell you who she is. Here we go.
So if we fast forward to the time of, at the time, Vice President Kamala Harris, where she was the Attorney General of California, but then she was the District Attorney in San Francisco. So tell us about your career as a, probation officer. How long were you there, and what did you actually do?
Well, okay, so I was in juvenile, and I spent about 15 years, maybe I'll go close to 15 years in juvenile. And of those 15 years, I spent 7 years with the school. At the time that Kamala Harris was Attorney General, that's when they started statewide having probation officers in the school and a school resource officer that is usually from the sheriff's department. And at that time, what was brought to our attention was the strategic gang plan. So they put probation officers in the school under her tenure. And that there were some issues with that.
So what was the reasoning of her putting probation officers in the school? Like, why?
Well, it's supposed to make the school safer, but really there were other issues, just in my own understanding. And I've talked to some other POs and they have the same experience. It was supposed to curb school violence, but also supposed to curb truancy under the guise of helping these marginalized families. So they didn't put them in the really nice schools. A lot of the POs that I know and myself went to the schools that were in the communities that had a high level of highly melanated people, foundational Black Americans. And so those are the schools that the probation officers were placed in.
Okay, and so when you place in these schools, what is it you were supposed? They're talking about keep it safe, but what were you doing to keep it safe, according to what Kamala wanted y'all to do?
Well, okay, so here's another thing is that one of the things, if somebody had a fight or something went on, they wanted us to cite the kid in the court. So, when I was coming up, if you had a problem with a kid, if they hit you, you hit them back. Okay, well, we'll deal with that. Or the parents had a meeting, but it was about, hey, write these citations into the juvenile traffic court. And what that did was that created a paper trail. So when that child got in trouble later on, they could go back to the juvenile traffic court and say, well, hey, this kid had problems back in elementary or junior high. And so the other thing about that was they had us writing these truancy citations under an ed code, which is 48260, if I can remember it right, 48260, where they had us writing like $500 citations to the parents of a child if they missed a certain amount of school. Now, and you go to school 9 months out of the year. So if you miss 10 days of school, you're a habitual truant. But they changed that to where if you had 3 absences that were not, and your parents forgot to call it in, then they could say that you're a truant. And then they want to send you to a hearing. And that hearing is that's created a lot of damage. The hearing is called a SARB hearing, a SARB A and a SARB B. So here it is. These parents are working hard every day. They're sending the kids to school. Maybe the kid ditched class, or maybe I saw where some children had medical issues and the parents are waiting for the school to create some type of independent study so the child wouldn't get behind. Well, they'll send a letter. They were sending letters to the parents saying your child missed school. We think that they missed too much school. So now you have to go to this hearing. You don't even understand as a parent, what is this about? You go to the hearing and there's a district attorney, child and family services, a probation officer, and a school principal or a school representative, and sometimes somebody else. And you're coming in a room and it's like court. There's 5 people sitting at a table looking at you, wanting to know why your child's not in school. And sometimes they'll send the letter to the home, and if the parent doesn't get the letter, they don't know that there's a hearing. So when maybe the parent can't get off work. A lot of these parents they had to work 2 jobs just to make it. And the parent gets off work, sees, oh, I missed the hearing. Well, guess what? You didn't show up. So they send an officer to your house to write you a citation for $500. You got to go. The kid doesn't go to court. The parent's going to court.
Mm-hmm.
So the parent goes to court. And if you have 3 children, and I saw this a lot. If you had 3 children, and maybe one of them was sick and the other 2 caught it, and you're working and you're trying to take care of the kids, and you just didn't have time to call in, that's $500 per child. In one instance, that's
per child?
Per child. If you have 3 kids and all 3 of those kids missed those days, that's $1,500. That's what was going on back then. And from my understanding, it's still going on. But back then, I can tell you honestly, because I was a part of this, not understanding what it was in the beginning. But $500 per child. And if you get cited, let's say 3 times they cite you, you're looking at a county lid, which is 1 year misdemeanor in the county jail for the parent.
So what would happen if you put a parent in jail? What happens to the child?
Somebody in the family got to take the kids. If not, CFS going to take the kids.
Now, a person in the chat was saying that's straight up a school to prison pipeline.
It is. And the strategic game plan is by the 3rd grade, they know how many prisons or juvenile halls to build. So they keep a track record. This is how they funnel the kids into the school to prison pipeline. And if it wasn't for, there's a lot of, the difference between police and probation officers is the police arrest you, he gets a win. If the probation officer arrests you, it's a loss. And so there are a lot of us, that look like us from, highly melanated, who got in the way of that and said, hey, this ain't right. So then there's the kickback where the departments are like, you're going to do this. And we're like, no, we're not, because these are our own kids. These are kids in our community. And I've personally seen mothers when I come to, before I really knew what was going on, because look, I don't work for the school district. I'm contracted to the school district. Mm-hmm. And they break down and say, I already got a couple of these. I can't pay this. I can't keep food on the table. And you got kids going to different schools. So what happens when all your kids, let's say I had one, well, this is actually true. I had some kids, they missed 2 weeks because of lice. The parent got cited in there, had to go to court several times. Thank God the judge knew it wasn't right. The judge knew, he didn't throw it out, but he let her make payments. But you're talking about $3,500.
My Lord. And these are regular working class people.
Working class people. A lot of these people are single parents. Mm-hmm. Some of them don't have cars. I mean, it depends on where you are. There are people that live in more rural or desert areas. There's not much transportation. And if the kids miss the school bus, they have no way to get the kids to school.
You see. So you'd like to comment. Go ahead, sir. Because my question here's what I was thinking. The one woman who had the child with these are the real horror stories. What we hear is her standing here at this conference that she was speaking in 2010, and I did speed it up a little bit. But what you hear is her confidently saying these are the things that she has come up with. And I know, first of all, she does not have a original thought in her mind that it had to be another purpose. But this is something that's going on around the United States now. And I'd like to also add that there is a bad piece to this, because you have a lot of bad actors out there that are not just concerned for the children going to school. You have a lot of people who are counting them ducats. It's all about the money at the end of the day. Go ahead, Judge.
Well, one of the problems that you're having nationally and in California is a privatization of the process where people are actually making money off of this. See, when you lock somebody up, you have to feed them, clothe them, shelter them, transport them around, and there's money to be made there. When you're talking about these children and the situations involved, if you look at what they are requiring of the children in terms of where they have to attend schools, it doesn't make any sense at all. Now, my late former father-in-law used to be a traffic engineer for the Bay Area Rapid Transit, and he and I had some discussions about how this was working. And he said it didn't make any sense at all, because you had situations where a parent is encouraged not to operate a motor vehicle because of the traffic congestion, the pollution, which is of very much concern in California. and they wind up having children who are in schools that are very far away from their places of work, and there's no real way for them to expeditiously get some child someplace when the sun's just coming up in the morning, get to work, especially when there are multiple children involved, where there are a lack of fathers in the neighborhoods and in the home place, and a lot of the junior high, middle school level kids are completely out of control. There's nobody to help them with that process. And instead of developing the character aspects where the child becomes a willing participant in his own education, you simply alienate them further, and you do things to cause that child to behave in an inappropriate fashion. And it's a vicious negative dialect that goes down to a kind of a purgatory. So it is not a pretty thing, and that's not the way you do it. There are some other programs that could have been put in place, some other things that could have been done that would have had a much more effective outcome that would be less inequitable upon the people who are impacted. And then I kept hearing some things referring to what triggered my recollection of saying, oh, there's money being made. See, for example, you have juvenile facilities that are subcontracted out, and then there's so much per night where somebody is going to generate for benefit of the incarcerative institution. You also get this thing that we aren't even getting into that. The $3,500 we're talking about is just a fine. That's not the big money. The big money is the court costs, see, that are attended upon the operation of these kinds of courts. And you might have $3,500 in fines and $8,000, $9,000 in cost that some judges will allow somebody up to 90 days to pay, but they keep coming back in. They lose work. They may lose their job. And then you have certain entities that are employers. They have workers that are reaching a certain level of seniority where they are supposed to get a raise or an increase in their compensation. So they use any little excuse to discharge them so they don't have to pay them the next pay grade. They bring in brand new people to take the place. These people are untrained. The customer service goes to hell, and you get a real live mess. But that's what's generated by what you see. And it's just grandstanding. And by the way, what's funny about it? I don't see anything amusing to be grinning like that. Do you?
No, I think that she was, let me come on screen. I think that she was a little excited because she's a diabolical individual. And this is just my personal opinion. I see the laughing and the grinning and the chuckling. I see all of that as she enjoyed doing this to people. Like she said, when the parents would ask, well, who is this? Oh, it's mean. Who are those mean people? And I'm paraphrasing here. It's the one that, that mean Kamala sent in. I think that she gets off on this. I honestly do. I honestly do. I do. I think she gets off on it.
Her mother had a reputation for being an extreme feminist. So this is an exercise of feminine power. Oh, glory, look what I did. But the other thing, getting back to what you just saw, well, not the lady that was testifying as to the reality of how it works, but when she claimed fourth grade, well, it's interesting that, again, the yearbook she put out when she was running for office in California, which was from Canada, and I guess she was trying to show her connection with England's Commonwealth and India and all that other stuff when she was campaigning as an Indian, not somebody black. She said she was in kindergarten through 12th grade. That's what her yearbook says. They detailed everybody's experiences in the system, and hers was K through 12. So how does she get to San Francisco when her mother had the exclusive custody? Somebody said, well, he had her during the summer vacations and on holidays, but that's not when you're going to school. So do we believe this, or is this another one of these, I used the bathtub to clean the greens, or I listened to Tupac smoking dope in my dorm while I was an assistant prosecutor? Is that one of those, or what?
It's most assuredly one of those. It's one of those to fit in. It's one of those to see. Here's the thing, and the bottom line is that she is definitely one of these individuals who don't think very highly of the individuals that she thinks she needs to make it. She needs the Black woman to move into something, into this new position. But her real feeling is she does not think that we have any sense, that we're not going to challenge your information. Okay, she believes that we're that dumb, and for the most part, she could be accurate to a point until people give individuals enough information to do their own digging. Now, unfortunate piece is that as much as we're digging, they're counter digging. Every time we dig, they pull something down. Every time we get a piece of documentation, they're removing it so that it's not able to be disseminated and shared. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to one of my mods on the phone because she and I work together a lot. She helps me out a lot with pulling information or whatnot. And a lot of the documents that we had, save the ones that I printed, have now been removed. So here's the thing. She's banking on people not having any knowledge of who she is. And she's banking on the fact that in her mindset, we dumber than her. Okay, I'm going to say it like that. She thinks that the Black woman that she's really using to pull her way through to get into the presidency, which she don't need because all they got to do is, move around with those electoral votes and do whatever they want to do. Okay, they already proved they can do it virtually. But she's banking on the fact that we're not going to do any research. And I'm banking on the fact that it's important for all of us who can to dig a little deeper, find what you can find, print it out if you have to. But this lady is diabolical. She is eager and happy. The only 2 times I've ever seen her happy, and the only 2 times that I've seen her hold a conversation longer than the ha-ha cackle, is the first thing dealing with abortion, telling women that it is their right to choose, but you didn't have the right to choose back in 2020 and you didn't want something to go in your body. But you can definitely choose this. You can't go and choose which type of contraception you're going to decide to use. Okay, because as an adult, we're not talking about the offshoot of the other issue. Okay, but as an adult, let's keep it in this wheelhouse. You know that when you lay down with a man, that you're going to come up with a couple of things. And judge, we know that it's either going to be an STD or 3 things: STD, STI, or a baby. So you would take some type of precaution as a thoughtful adult to protect it. So she's not talking about that. But she has glee when she's telling you to go out there and do that. And then she has glee when she's talking about taking people to truancy court that inevitably put people in those marginalized communities that she so eloquently spoke of in financial ruin. And it brands the child. They get into that cume. And once they start tampering with that child's cume, that cume follows them along the way. It doesn't just follow them in the state of California. They're getting your documents from wherever you went. Case in point, go to any college. Go to a college. Try to play football. They're going to get all of your information because that's what it is. You're dealing with a system. And so I don't think that...
I think you're right.
I think she's nuts.
I think you make some good options. I think she is. And then that whole thing about sister girl stuff. Your mother is an oncology specialist, a cancer researcher, and your father is a tenured professor in the English system. Come on now. You didn't exactly have a hood rat background
at all. And she she was in Canada.
Yeah, but and then I think of Canada. You ever watch South Park?
Oh yeah. He killed Kenny. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but their portrayal of the Canadians. What about the 2 comedians that the parents hate, that the kids love, that fart all over the place? I can't
even think of their names.
Yeah, I keep thinking of them when I see her, and it's interesting. Now that I think of it, they always have the Canadian characters breaking out in hysterical laughter at inappropriate moments. So, I don't
Well,
want to talk about them, but
the
there
mind
is
of a
that.
madman. It's the mind of a madman and the mind of a mad woman. When you see them, if any diabolical character that you've been able to watch on a movie or whatnot, let's use that as an example. Some of them have these crazy laughs where they break out into laughter. And then after they break out into laughter, you see them go and switch reels, and now they're doing something else. They become somebody else. That is exactly what I see when I, and this is my impression of her. I don't know this woman. All I know are the fruits of her labor. All I know are the things that she said. All I know are the things that she has been accused of and the things that have been proven by way of lawsuits that have come about because of the fact that she did incarcerate people and withhold evidence, and that she did keep evidence back that should have been presented that could have helped somebody. And then even upon appeal, like the young man that we showed last week, everybody, the one who was not even there, and they accused him of unaliving or murdering somebody, and then she prevented him from getting out. And then when he did get out, they had to sue. They had to sue to get the money for the time lost. But what goes on with a person when they're in prison and incarcerated?
They get turned into a homosexual involuntarily.
Come on now. And
That's
you're not going to be
to
able to
them.
undo that. Yeah, you're not going to undo that, are you, Judge? They're not going to undo that. There's no way that they can undo that. Once you've done that, you cannot undo that. And so to me, she seems to take pride. She seems to be happy with watching the demise of Black folk. Okay? There may be some white folk, but Black folk.
She seems like she enjoys a perverse enjoyment, that is, of doing stuff harmful to people. She seems like a sadist.
Come on, that's exactly what I called her the other day, because that sadistic laugh.
Yeah, it's like, oh, yesterday 2 people got killed. And it's another example of too many guns. Like, what in the world is wrong with you?
Judge, I want to ask you.
Insane. I'd say give that person a mental evaluation if you did that in front of me.
That's exactly what I was about to ask you. I was about to ask you, do you think that what Trump said, and I have something from him too, so I want to deal with this. Well, yeah, I believe, I believe that. I believe that there's something definitely not right. And I also, let
me tell you what it is. Well. She's 60 years old. You're 62. You're okay. But we know after you get over 60, we have friends who aren't okay. They start suffering from a thing called, quote, early onset dementia, unquote. And that's what she's doing, that bounce around the curve bit, that word salad. Today is a great day because today will be tomorrow, and tomorrow is the day. That's why it's a great day, because it is today, tomorrow. Like, what did you just say, idiot? But you see, that's what you get. And meanwhile, this is supposed to be the person with the nuclear codes and the finger over the red button to say activate the codes and launch. This is the person that's supposed to be dealing with Putin and Xi Jinping and Rocket Man in North Korea, and they're sitting there on one side of the conference table, and she's cackling away, giving you that cackling stuff she does. Look at this. Lost.
They just removed her.
What in the world is this?
They just removed her from a from the meeting that they had. I don't think it was a situation room, but they had her in a meeting, and they were dealing with some pretty heavy stuff, and they removed her. They told her she was free to go, and they finished having the meeting. This lady is not prepared to be the president of the United States, and that's my personal opinion based on what I've seen. Second of all, whomever it is that's going to be, maybe she's going to be the proxy for the person that's really behind the curtain, because for the past 4 years almost, I've been saying that the person behind the curtain looks a whole lot darker than the cat that they got, and I'm gonna stick to that. But with that said, I do believe that
Obama.
I believe that I believe that it's the whole that whole piece. Yeah, I believe that it's him. I believe that because of the fact that Kamala's sister works directly with Clinton, I believe that she, as a mentor of hers, because that's something also that's been mentioned, is that she's a mentor of hers. I believe that there's a lot of devious individuals that are pulling the strings. The bad part about it is that if you co-sign with that and then you throw your popular vote behind that, you are responsible for what's about to happen. And I'm not telling y'all who to vote for. I don't care if you vote for Mr. Naranga, the orange man, or her. I don't care. What I want you to do is be informed. Don't walk around like a sheeple. You're literally walking around like the land of the zombies if you just go and vote for somebody simply because everybody else does it.
Let me tell you something. I used to make a lot of money, and my ex-wife loved to ski, so I learned to ski. And we had a couple of places up in Aspen, Colorado. One of them we rented out 5-bedroom condo, and the other one we stayed in on the side of a hill at 8,200 feet up. Okay, I met some millionaires and billionaires. These are some completely ruthless people. Now, let me say also that there are hidden connections. We had the Rockefellers who were still involved in politics and stuff. You've got the Kennedys, and they're a very extended family, and they've got gangster in their background, literally through Joe Kennedy, the Scion, who was the Irish gangster in Boston. You've got the Bushes. You've got tacked in with the Bushes, you've got the Cheneys, you got the Sarah Palins, you got the Barry Soetoros, or AKA Barack Obama's in there. You've got the CIA tied up. George Herbert Walker Bush was chief of the CIA. Obama's grandmother, maternal grandmother, dispensed the funds as the vice president of an Hawaiian bank. She was in charge of dispensing the funds for the CIA and the Northwest Pacific area. You've got Lolo Soetoro, who was stepdaddy and adoptive daddy to Barry Soetoro, Bathhouse Barry, aka Barack Obama. And he did subcontract work for the CIA in China, North Korea, North Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Indonesia, you name it. He was wanted for mass murder. He was in charge of the death squads for the Indonesian government. He was also executive vice president for Standard Oil at one point. He was an oil baron. You've got all of this big money and all of this extended power that's been there for years. You have Prescott Bush, the U.S. senator, who next preceded John F. Kennedy as senator from Massachusetts. You've got a number of Bushes who ran various heavy industrial operations that had been engaged in the spy and information game for years in Europe and elsewhere. You have one Bush who was installed by Carnegie and Rockefellers, who was CEO of a consortium of German arms manufacturers that were acquired after World War I, and who sent him paychecks all the way through World War II. And it's also interesting as to the consequences of that with the Allied bombing campaign and some particularly juicy targets that were ignored because of connections. It's a lot poisonous in there. So you have to take this in terms of families coming in to do stuff. And then let's not forget President Theodore Roosevelt and his nephew, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, nor can we forget President Adams and his son, President Adams. And we have these family groupings that seem to get in place to run America. Also part of the billionaire process, Warren Buffett, the billionaire, is also related to Obama, Cheney, Bush, Palin, and that bunch. So we're not looking at exactly isolated individuals. We're looking at people who have come from families at the seat of power, who have been groomed to handle power, who've been set up with all of the connections, who have all of the advantages, who have a press that is beholden to the families, if not owned by the families. And a lot of information that would get out is suppressed. Now, let's talk about suppressed information. This very weekend, when I was down in Atlanta and I had cause to disseminate research, I went online and over again, I started getting notations like this. Last upgraded 2 days ago, last upgraded 3 days ago, last upgraded 4 days ago. And like you said, some of the stuff you have been used to finding, you can't find anymore. And I'll tell you something, I probably shouldn't, but this stuff is not even secure. Let's take Wikipedia. You go to Wikipedia, you look up an article, you see that little pencil up in the right-hand corner? Little animated pencil. All you got to do is click on it, put your email address in there, and you can change or add anything you want to the article, and it'll stay there until somebody goes back and corrects it. So I go back regularly and correct misinformation they put in there on me. And it is what it is, but anybody can change that stuff, and Google will let people come in and remove stuff that they find. Remember, Google operates on this basis too. If it makes you feel uncomfortable, whether or not it's truth, you're entitled to have it taken off unless you're conservative.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Unless you're a conservative is absolutely right. And it is to the point now where, you know, the censorship is such that if you are talking about everything that is unhealthy, not, you know, everything that's vile, if you're speaking on anything that makes good common sense, where you usually have to, I know common sense is relative these days, but you will most assuredly stand the risk of being censored. You will definitely get hit.
It's a forgotten art. You see, because common sense is a common sense thing. That's why common sense things get put in a position where common sense is dangerous, because you see, they may have something somebody listens to, so you can't have that. That's why no common sense.
Yeah. What? Well, you know, when you were talking about some of the word salad that she uses, before we go into this clip, because I want you to give us your opinion on this, what she was doing was incantations. And I was telling people that before. I was like, this chick ain't stupid. She's just waiting to show you who she really is. And she is the purple, the harlot in purple. She is that's who she is. But she's not stupid at all. Some of the things that she was saying, when you go back and you dig and you look them up, a lot of that stuff is things that you can find as Marxism. A lot of the stuff that she was saying is some Marxist statements. What is it? Oh goodness, what is his name? Tao, what's his name? It's one of the guys from Japan. I mean, from China, where he was basically, you know, getting rid of everything from the past. And then when you get rid of all the stuff from the past, then you got this new stuff, and this is going to be your new future. And she
Chairman Mao.
I believe that's who it is. Yes, Mao.
Mao Zedong.
Mao Zedong. Yes.
Get a copy of the Red Book.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to write that down. But that's definitely who it is. Ironically,
quotations of Chairman Mao.
Yes, she was literally saying all of that, and everybody's like, "Oh, she's so stupid." And I stopped for a second. I was like, "Yeah, she seemed like she's crazy, but she ain't." This chick is saying something, and we don't know who she is, and that's the danger. This woman here that I'm going to share with you right quick, I want to get your comment on this, because I'll say that as an interviewer, I was absolutely embarrassed that this woman conducted herself like this. And I want you to, I'm using this to show you how people will stand with a banner even after somebody has already said, "Hi, I'm running for such and such, and I am an Indian. I am I'm a person from Southeast Asia." Get a load of this, folks, while you guys are getting a gander. Refresh yourself with this, because it really did embarrass me for this chick. I was embarrassed for her. I thought she was really an idiot, the way she treated him. Let's go.
Sir, do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a Black woman?
Well, I can say no. I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was Black until a number of years ago, when she happened to turn Black, and now she wants to be known as Black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always
But you know
identified
what?
as a black woman.
I
She went to a
respect
historically
either
black
one.
college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be clear, sir.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So
he's absolutely right. What's wrong with her?
well, and then this chick literally stood on there with the banner, what you just saw, saying who she said she was. When I have clips that are showing her saying, you know, basically standing there taking the rep for her being an Indian woman. She was on there with the gal from that TV show.
Well,
nonetheless, you know what I'm saying?
Let me put this to you. If you're mixed black and white, what are you? Are you white or are you black?
By American standards, you black.
Okay. If you're mixed black with Chinese, what are you?
You black.
If you're black mixed with Japanese, what are you?
That's a black person.
If you're black mixed with German, what are you?
That'd be black in America.
Okay, if you're black and you're mixed with Indian, how the devil do you become Indian unless you really are Indian and you're not black?
Because she's not black.
There you go.
You see, and she had nothing to do with the foundational issues of the folks that she is running around here pretending to be. This is Rachel Dolezal 2.0.
Well, hold on. Who does she have a connection with? She doesn't have a connection through anybody white. She doesn't have a connection through anybody yellow, nobody brown, nobody red, nobody black with the country's history. So why do we take the singular candidate in the 235-year history of the United States with the least connection to the country's history and all of a sudden fall in love with her? That's fresh off the boat. She's a migrant.
Absolutely.
She's not an anchor baby. She's a migrant because her parents had no intention to stay here. They just came through on academic visas.
They came through with a purpose to do just what they did. Here's my thought process. I don't ever have a feeling that something happened by accident. You know, every single thing that goes on, especially as it relates to politics and who's going to get into office and all of that stuff, especially higher up in office, I believe that stuff has been orchestrated and you know, just literally, I mean, you know, Andre Previn, I mean, just one of the best, you know, just orchestrated to no end. And it's part and parcel of the whole system itself. It is a system. You just mentioned all of those people who are relatives that are all attached to each other. Even Hillary Clinton and Trump are like 17th removed or some odd something. They're even cousins. So I don't believe that nothing is an accident. I don't believe that her being who she is in this particular day and time is an accident. I believe that it's all purpose. And I believe that if we allow that to happen, the purpose is going to creep out everybody. I never can forget the fact, and after this, we'll go to a commercial and show you guys to get yourself some good stuff. You know, I will never forget the time that I saw our tax dollars go for a boatload of guillotines. I think they may be waiting to use those guillotines for, I don't know, maybe they got a reason for one. You know, maybe there's somebody that they don't like. You guys get yourself some barbecue sauce talking about guillotines. Here we go.
Hey everyone, it's me, Felicia, of the Lockhart Perspective and Headlines with a Voice. I want to tell you a little secret. This is what I used to do because I don't do it anymore. I would go to the store, buy the barbecue sauce, pour it inside of a bowl, put a whole bunch of different spices, a dash of brown sugar, a dash of maple, and a dash of mustard, stir it all around, and everybody would be like, oh my gosh, this is the best, this is the best. But I was exhausted after all of that, and a lot of times I couldn't remember how many dashes of what I put in it. But I don't have to do that anymore because now I just go to Judge Joe Brown's website and I order his 3-pack of bottled barbecue sauce. It is by far the best, and I do mean the best barbecue sauce I've ever eaten. And when you go to his website and you order his 3-pack, you'll see exactly what I mean. Head on over to jjbbbbq.com and order Judge Joe Brown's barbecue sauce. You'll be glad you did, and you're going to tell me about it. I know you will.
Lockhart Perspective.
Okay, we just said goodbye to the Lockhart Perspective on the other channel, and so I want to thank everybody who did join us from over there for joining us. Thank you so very much for that. That was outstanding. You guys saw the JJBB. You guys saw that. You guys saw all that good stuff. Go over there and get your barbecue sauce, and you can also get it on Amazon. All you've got to do is look it up. You'll see it right there. Judge Joe Brown's barbecue sauce can be delivered to you. And if you are a Prime member, you know how lickety split you get stuff from over there on Amazon. Go ahead on and get you some, baby. Also, you see down below on the bottom, there's a ticker tape that is actually helping to help the show with our guest today. Go to RIK, it's a $ for the Cash App for Judge Joe Brown. $ RIKILSTONE. That's Ricky L. Stone, so that you can support Judge Joe Brown and thereby support the channel. If you want to support the channel directly, you can leave a super chat. You can leave a super chat or a super sticker. That helps us out a lot here, believe it or not, because this is information that you already know is sort of just hit that super sticker and hit that super chat. That's all I got to say. Judge, I'm glad that you're here.
Commercial
Yeah,
blurb.
Go right ahead.
If you live in Los Angeles, you can go to 79th and Western. On the corner, there is D's Original Takeout Grill. That stands for Chef Damon. He collaborates with me on the barbecue stuff. He makes it wholesome and clean. It's halal and kosher and all that stuff. You can sell it in Whole Foods. It's healthy for you. I came up with a very old-time greasy one from back when. So we collaborate on that. Tiffany Haddish is an investor. We get our links, chicken, beef, Beyond Beef, this vegan thing, hot, mild, smoked, raw, and they get put up by the only USDA certified Black-owned packing plant in California. It's located in Compton. So check it out. You can get the finished product at D's Original Takeout Grill, 79th and Western, not too far from where I grew up. And enjoy yourself. So there it is.
I lost a friend from California just recently, and we used to hang out in that area. I do want to take a second just to give my condolences to the family of Jackie Goucher Ferris. She and I used to sing together. We used to minister together at Beverly Bam Crawford's church, Bible Enrichment Fellowship Church. We used to sing together. She and I were a member of Purpose, and she wrote the famous song, My Help, that even Brooklyn Tab and a few other people have covered. And she passed away at 9:19 on Saturday morning, California time. And so you mentioned 79th and Western. It reminded me of her. She and I were very good friends. Our children were in children's church together. We were at BAMS together. It's a painful time. It really is. I tell you, I cried last night. I cried all Saturday and probably going to cry some more. But with that said, a great, great writer, one of the best writers and vocalists in Christendom. So she passed away after suffering from a terrible car crash in March of this year. She had some complications after, having surgeries after that accident, but she finally passed away on Saturday. So with that in mind, I just want to say rest in peace to her. And then the family, I'm interceding for you guys on a daily basis, especially going into, this time we're coming into where a lot of people that deal with holidays and whatnot. So with that said, I just wanted to leave that there. But yes, 79th and Western, I know those areas. Those was my stomping grounds. And then if you had talked about the Sloss and Swap meet, I could tell y'all some stuff about that too. Very versatile girl, very versatile girl. But yeah, so I appreciate you being here, Judge. I'm going to give you the opportunity to share with us anything else you want to share with us. I'd like to know what you have coming up, if you have anything coming up, and what you'd like for people to focus on. What would you like to share?
Okay, there's a series that I'm going to be in. It's called The Forbidden, the Affair. And we are having a premiere in Baltimore at the end of this month. And we've been picked up. We'll be carried on one of the alternative networks. I think the agreement is for 2 years. I play this judge, kind of a crooked judge, who's also the godfather who runs the organized crime rackets in the area. He's also kind of a Batman who has an interest in doing some of the right things, sometimes for right reasons, sometimes for wrong reasons. But anyway, it's very interesting. It's well acted. It was done in Baltimore and in Los Angeles. And a lady was our director and producer, and she did a hell of a job. So come check it out. It'll be with you soon, and I will send you a trailer or two so you can take a gander at it.
Please do, because we'll hype it up over here for you. Any chance we get, we'll definitely do that. So now say the name of it again for those folks that are watching.
The Forbidden, the Affair.
The Forbidden, the Affair. Okay, we got it. Dun, dun, dun. All right. I just had to do that. I have that, and then I have another button that's a guilty pleasure of mine. So when I was talking about Kamala's lies, this would come up on the screen. Had me a little doggy. I told everybody last week, I said, I'll be 60 years old next month. And by golly, I'm going to have fun. And so I made that little dog, and he gives me joy. Listen, I appreciate you, Judge. I appreciate you. I appreciate Ricky. Thank you for all that you do. And, you've enlightened us, especially, with regard to the information and the historical pieces. I would love to have you back so we can just do deep diving on history, because people don't know history. If we can do constitutional history, if we can do anything that's going to teach people. Another thing I'd love to talk about is a lot of folks running around here these days talking about I'm a sovereign, and they get pooped upside the head. Want to talk about some of that stuff too. So we appreciate you, Judge. I love you, and I thank you so much for joining us today. And if you ever have anything you want to say, you just want to come on, please make sure that you do. But we look forward to having you back again soon. And you guys, please make sure to support Judge Joe Brown, because like he said earlier, he doesn't really need it. It is a requirement, okay? And then he also helps other people, all right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the real point, is that, you want to make sure that you're able to help support others. So thank you.
Airline fare has gone up and gotten drastically more expensive.
Oh yeah.
And rebel when somebody assumes they've got you by the cojones. Show them they don't. So here's one thing to consider. When one party can always count on your vote no matter what they don't do for you, and the other party can always count on not having your vote no matter what they try to do for you, neither party has an incentive to do anything for you. So what you have to do is buy your way into good grace with a political party and shame the other one and say, see, this is what it feels like when your well runs dry. You don't have the black water there. Now we're offering it to these other guys. So hold your nose. Don't vote for the lesser of two evils. Vote against the positive evil that has made the horrible mistake of presuming that they know they're Negroes and they own them. So don't be owned. Be free. Come off that plantation. The gates and the fences are in your mind.
Thank you. Have a good one, sir. Y'all come off the plantation. You heard him say it, and that's exactly how I feel. Come off that plantation, because it's not doing any of us any good. We have to get rid of the sacred cows that our parents had, that our grandmama and them had, all of that stuff that we thought that we were supposed to be beholden to is not done anything for any of us. And I don't care where you come from. Now, there was somebody who mentioned something about black. We were using black interchangeably, okay? Because the individuals who are here, that have sort of gotten muddled up into all this thing. People think, I ain't black because black is not a country. I keep saying it. I'm going to keep saying it until people start to think about that. If you have to go home, where is black? Is there a country? Is it a continent? Is it on a certain continent? Black. How do you get there? Does anybody know? Anybody? No, because there's no place called black. You got Japanese, they can go to Japan. Chinese can go to China. Where can black people go? Africans even have their own countries. The whole continent has different countries within it. And there are people who go from everywhere and they live in different places. You got people from Zimbabwe, they're Zimbabweans. So there ain't no black. Okay. You got to ask the questions. Why do they want you to think that you're black? Could they have stolen somebody's identity and shifted it around? Would it appear so? I don't know. Do your own digging. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for hanging out with us today for the past few hours and welcoming our guest, Judge Joe Brown. Please remember what we always say here on this channel, that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of the Most High. You guys take care of yourselves and take care of one another. And remember to always take care of you first. Don't worry about trying to run around here and take care of other people, because I tell you right now, if you do that, you're going to be in trouble. Because those people will not worry one way or another about you. If you are gone, they'll walk right over you and they'll keep it pushing. So take care of yourselves and make sure that after you do that, you take care of those around you. And then until we see each other again, I need you to take care of my friend, baby, because my friend is you. All right. Peace.
To receive instant notification each time I upload, please hit the subscribe button and the bell notification.
Black Art Perspective. Helping you along the way. Helping you to make it through another day.
Hey everyone, it's me, Felicia, of the Lockhart Perspective and Headlines with a Voice. I want to tell you a little secret. This is what I used to do, because I don't do it anymore. I would go to the store, buy the barbecue sauce, pour it inside of a bowl, put a whole bunch of different spices, a dash of brown sugar, a dash of maple, and a dash of mustard, stir it all around, and everybody would be like, oh my gosh, this is the best, this is the best. But I was exhausted after all of that, and a lot of times I couldn't remember how many dashes of what I put in it. But I don't have to do that anymore, because now I just go to Judge Joe Brown's website and I order his 3-pack of bottled barbecue sauce. It is by far the best, and I do mean the best barbecue sauce I've ever eaten. And when you go to his website and you order his 3-pack, you'll see exactly what I mean. Head on over to jjbbbq.com and order Judge Joe Brown's barbecue sauce. You'll be glad you did, and you're going to tell me about it. I know you will.
Here's a preview of our upcoming show.
The woman outside and the woman inside are two different types of women. The woman outside keeps the husband engaged. That's why he keeps coming back. And the thing is, the woman inside used to keep the husband engaged before she got inside and decided to be the woman inside and changed. The thing with you men is now I'm like this. We're dating. We go out on dates. We have a beautiful relationship. We have sex.
Okay. What is she talking about? That lady is talking about the fact that all she dates is married men. So that's going to be an entire series. That clip came from an awesome channel. You saw the little the indication of what it was on the side there. That's the channel that you need to go check it out with if you want to see it in its entirety. And when we do run it, it'll be run probably in a couple of days here, but we have all the clips already done. We want to talk about why there are women out there who do not have any self-worth or value. They believe that this is who they are, and they're supposed to date other people's husbands. Not only is this thought process unsafe, but it's also wrecking a lot of families, because a lot of people get hooked up, especially the dudes, with Sunshine. And if you guys know anything about movies and TV shows or whatnot, y'all know who Sunshine is. All right, you guys, take care.